Reality is that which, when you stop believing in it, doesn't go away. Hello everybody, I'm Sam, and tonight it's gonna get weird. You're listening to Chilliteracy. Hello, hi. Yeah, I thought I'd start with a profound quote by an author who's going to be heavily featured across the next two of these streams that I'm doing today and the other one. No, fake news. I'm sorry, Amos, it's true. Yeah, that's a quote from, pushes up glasses, Philip K. Dick there. Esteemed sci-fi author of whom I've read a lot. No, I'm not going to be that kind of guy. But, yeah, I don't know. This started as... frankly, it started as so many things do with, oh, good grief, I've got to think of something that's happening very soon, and I haven't planned a single thing for it, so quick, come up with something. Monitor listed, hello, welcome in, thank you. How were the Assassin's Creeds? Was it very London? I hope it was a good time. I wasn't able to stop in and watch, I'm sorry, but I hope it was fun. Hi. Yeah, like, this began with me having my own crisis of, what do I actually want to read for this? And, you know, I have my own extremely narrow field of interest, which is really just because it's the main thing that I've read as a child, as a teenager. Anything younger than now is child, as far as I'm concerned for me. That's just the way my brain operates. When in doubt, sci-fi, exactly. And the problem there is that a lot of, well, none of the sci-fi that I read in my younger years, which was basically stealing books from my older brother's shelves, where he would go to, like, charity shops and just buy old sci-fi books. And that's what he'd read, and so therefore it's what I would read. And none of those stories are in the public domain, which means I don't really get to read any of the stuff that I kind of grew up in and sort of learning to love. Like, none of that is really within the remit that we've given ourselves for this channel. Because I want to piss people off by reading work that's still in copyright. So, you know, on the other hand, that's been great because I've read a bunch of stuff outside of my usual field of interest and learned that also horror can be cool. Hey, how about that? And Mark Twain. So, yeah, like, that's really how I kind of ended up getting into this. And, you know, I thought, why not for this, as we've done a few times in the past, sort of relax those rules a little bit. You know, let ourselves run wild and free for this one. My taste, horror, sci-fi, Mark Twain. Yes, exactly. I'm getting distracted. Yeah, like, and what I want to do is I want to read a bunch of stuff that I like. I'm going to... My tastes are impeccable, says Guy who has those tastes. And I want to read a bunch of stuff that I've enjoyed. It's a broad selection over the years, from over the years. Some of it older, some of it newer. It doesn't all neatly fit under the same banner. Like, what it sort of tended to crystallize towards, due to the nature of the stuff that I enjoyed the most when I was younger, is, as I've titled it, existential dread and science fiction. And I think, you know, dread, probably a bit too broad a word for it, but, you know, you need a catchy topic, and people like saying existential dread. But yeah, like, the first story I was going to read is, frankly, I'm putting it first because it's the most depressing one. It's not a particularly existential one. That's where, you know, I've packed the schedule with Philip K. Dick. But these are, in one way or another, stories that have, like, affected me or stayed with me in some way, in different ways, or examples of works that have done that. Like, I couldn't tell you specifically which Philip K. Dick story it was that I first read that made me go, damn, this guy's on something different. What the hell's this? I need more. but I've picked out a few of his anyway. Two short stories and a bit of a longer one, which will be coming in on Tuesday. And some other stuff. And so say, not everything fits neatly under this blanket. It's it's a small blanket, and we've got a lot of stuff to put under there. But it's gonna be hopefully a little bit weird, and not hopefully, but more as a warning, it's going to be a little bit depressing, some of these. But yeah, these are, I guess, the stories that in one way or another kind of set me on a path to having the interests that I have today. And so I thought I would share them with you. It's that. That doesn't pack down neatly into a title, so you get the one you got. You recall reading horror as a teenager, locked in the bathroom with your back against the door, can't sneak up behind you if you're ever back against the door. Smart. I pretty much all my younger years reading was done at night after everyone had gone to bed with a bedside lamp. That's how I read books, because I didn't want to go to sleep, so I would just stay up reading instead. Until something reaches through the door. Yeah, exactly. Just hand straight through the door. But phasing through it. Because the door's not real. Ah, gosh. But yeah, I don't know how long some of these are going to take to get through. And also, I apologise for... I don't have links for everything, as it probably makes sense, right? Not all of these are readily available to read along online. I have an Sleep has an antagonistic relationship with... Well, no, actually, no, you're right. I'm not going to correct you on that one. I have issues with Sleep. It's a concession. Frankly, if I submit to Sleep, I have lost the battle. And, it's something I can control. So therefore... I have fights with it. So this first story, as I said, is a depressing one. I have, in fact, there will be some people who know it, because I've remembered it many times over the years, and then sometime in the last year thought, I wonder if I can find it anywhere online. I didn't remember what it was. Well, actually no, that's not true. I did remember that it was called Descending. But if you try to search for a short story called Descending, you're going to have a hard time. But I eventually managed to dig it up and found an online version of it and the author's name. And so that is this. I remember linking it around and people going, wow, Sam, that's a real bummer. Yes, it is. But it's also a story, one of the ones you've read. Nice, yeah. It's also a story that, it stayed with me. As a younger person, as a young reader, I remember reading this one, and the fact it's stayed in my head for a good 30 years, more or less. I ain't got to justify it. I liked it. It was good. So I'm going to start with that. I'm reading off a screen, which I hate doing. So it's not going to be perfectly formatted for reading. I'm going to trip and stumble probably more than usual. But hey, it's live. So if we're all ready and all seated in place and comfortable and, just got to get as firm a grasp on reality as we can manage, let's have our first story tonight. As I say, this one of all of them is a bit of a downer, so if that's not something you're comfortable with, don't worry. You don't have to listen to this one. Feel free to skip out for 20-30 minutes or so and pick up the next one. But yeah, otherwise, let's begin with the first story. This is Descending by Thomas M. Disch. Catsup, mustard, pickle, relish, mayonnaise, 2 kinds of salad dressing, bacon grease, and a lemon. Oh yes, 2 trays of ice cubes. In the cupboard, it wasn't much better. jars and boxes of spices, flour, sugar, salt, and a box of raisins. An empty box of raisins. Not even any coffee. Not even tea, which he hated. Nothing in the mailbox but a bill from Underwood's. Unless we receive the arrears on your account. $4.75 in change jingled in his coat pocket. The plunder of the Chianti bottle he had promised himself never to break open. He was spared the unpleasantness of having to sell his books. They had all been sold. The letter to Graham had gone out a week ago. If his brother intended to send something this time, it would have come by now. I should be desperate, he thought. Perhaps I am? He might have looked in the Times, but no, that was too depressing. Applying for jobs at $50 a week and being turned down. Not that he blamed them. He wouldn't have hired himself. He had been a grasshopper for years. The ants were onto his tricks. He shaved without soap and brushed his shoes to a high polish. He whitened the sepulchre of his unwashed torso with a fresh, starched shirt and chose his somberest tie from the rack. He began to feel excited and expressed it characteristically by appearing statuesquely, icily calm. Descending the stairway to the first floor, he encountered Mrs. Beale, who was pretending to sweep the well-swept floor of the entrance. "Good afternoon, or I suppose good morning for you, eh?" "Good afternoon, Mrs. Beale." "Your letter come?" "Not yet." "The first of the month isn't far off." "Yes, indeed, Mrs. Beale." At the subway station he considered a moment before answering the attendant. "One token or two?" "Two," he decided. After all, he had no choice but to return to his apartment. The first of the month was still a long way off. If Jean Valjean had had a charge account, he would have never gone to prison. Having thus cheered himself, he settled down to enjoy the ads in the subway car. Smoke, try, eat, give, see, drink, use, buy. He thought of Alice with her mushrooms. Eat me. At 34th Street he got off and entered Underwood's department store directly from the train platform. On the main floor he stopped at the cigar stand and bought a carton of cigarettes. "Cash or charge?" "Charge." He handed the clerk the laminated plastic card. The charge was rung up. Fancy Groceries was on 5. He made his selection judiciously. A jar of instant and a £2 can of drip ground coffee, a large tin of corned beef, packaged soups and boxes of pancake mix and condensed milk, jam, peanut butter and honey, 6 cans of tuna fish. Then he indulged himself in perishables, English cookies and Edam cheese, a small frozen pheasant, even fruitcake. He never ate so well as when he was broke. He couldn't afford to. $14.87. This time, after ringing up his charge, the clerk checked the number on his card against her list of closed or doubtful accounts. She smiled apologetically and handed the card back. "Sorry, but we have to check." "I understand." The bag of groceries weighed a good 20 pounds. Carrying it with the exquisite casualness of a burglar passing before a policeman with his loot, he took the escalator to the bookshop on 8. His choice of books was determined by the same principle as his choice of groceries. First, the staples. 2 Victorian novels he had never read, Vanity Fair and Middlemarch, the Sayers translation of Dante, and a 2-volume anthology of German plays, none of which he had read, and few he had even heard of. Then the perishables, a sensational novel that had reached the bestseller list via the Supreme Court, and 2 mysteries. He had begun to feel giddy with self-indulgence. He reached into his jacket pocket for a coin. Heads, a new suit. Tails, the Sky Room. Tails. The sky room on 15 was empty of all but a few women chatting over coffee and cakes. He was able to get a seat by a window. He ordered from the a la carte side of the menu and finished his meal with espresso and baklava. He handed the waitress his credit card and tipped her 50 cents. Dawdling over his second cup of coffee, he began Vanity Fair. Rather to his surprise, he found himself enjoying it. The waitress returned with his card and a receipt for the meal. Since the sky room was on the top floor of Underwood's, there was only one escalator to take now, descending. Riding down, he continued to read Vanity Fair. He could read anywhere, in restaurants, on subways, even walking down the street. At each landing he made his way from the foot of one escalator to the head of the next without lifting his eyes from the book. When he came to the bargain basement, he would only be a few steps from the subway turnstile. He was halfway through Chapter 6, on page 55 to be exact, when he began to feel something amiss. How long does this damn thing take to reach the basement? He stopped at the next landing, but there was no sign to indicate on what floor he was, nor any door by which he might re-enter the store. Deducing from this that he was between floors, he took the escalator down one more flight, only to find the same perplexing absence of landmarks. There was, however, a water fountain, and he stooped to take a drink. I must have gone to a sub-basement, but this was not too likely after all. Escalators were seldom provided for janitors and stockboys. He waited on the landing, watching the steps of the escalators slowly descend toward him and, at the end of their journey, telescope in upon themselves and disappear. He waited a long while, and no one else came down the moving steps. Perhaps the store had closed. Having no wristwatch, and having rather lost track of the time, he had no way of knowing. At last, he reasoned that he had become so engrossed in the Thackeray novel that he had simply stopped on one of the upper landings, say on 8, to finish a chapter and had read on to page 55 without realizing that he was making no progress on the escalators. What he read, when he read, he could forget everything else. He must, therefore, still be somewhere above the main floor. The absence of exits, though disconcerting, could be explained by some quirk of the floor plan. The absence of signs was merely a carelessness on the part of the management. He tucked Vanity Fair into his shopping bag and stepped onto the grilled lip of the down-going escalator, not, it must be admitted, without a certain degree of reluctance. At each landing he marked his progress by a number spoken aloud. By 8 he was uneasy. By 15 he was desperate. It was, of course, possible that he had to descend 2 flights of stairs for every floor of the department store. With this possibility in mind, he counted off 15 more landings. No. Dazedly, as though to deny the reality of his seemingly interminable stairwell, he continued his descent. When he stopped again at the 45th landing, he was trembling. He was afraid. He rested the shopping bag on the bare concrete floor of the landing, realizing that his arm had gone quite sore from supporting the £20 and more of groceries and books. He discounted the enticing possibility that it was all a dream, for the dream world is the reality of the dreamer, to which he could not weakly surrender, no more than one could surrender to the realities of life. Besides, he was not dreaming. Of that he was quite sure. He checked his pulse. It was fast, say 80 a minute. He rode down 2 more flights, counting his pulse. 80 almost exactly. 2 flights took only 1 minute. He could read approximately 1 page a minute, a little less on an escalator. Suppose he had spent 1 hour on the escalators while he had read. 60 minutes, 120 floors, plus 47 that he had counted. 167. The sky room was on 15. 167 minus 15 equals 152. He was in the 152nd sub-basement. That was impossible. The appropriate response to an impossible situation was to deal with it as though it were commonplace, like Alice in Wonderland. Ergo, he would return to Underwoods the same way he had apparently left it. He would walk up the 152 flights of down-going escalators. Taking the steps 3 at a time and running, it was almost like going up a regular staircase. But after ascending the second escalator in this manner, he found himself already out of breath. There was no hurry. He would not allow himself to be overtaken by panic. No. He picked up the bag of groceries and books he had left on that landing, waited for his breath to return, and darted up a 3rd and 4th flight. While he rested on the landing, he tried to count the steps between floors, but this count differed depending on whether he counted with the current or against it, up or down. The average was roughly 18 steps, and the steps appeared to be 8 or 9 inches deep. Each flight was, therefore, about 12 feet. It was 1/3 of a mile as the plumb drops to Underwood's main floor. Dashing up the 9th escalator, the bag of groceries broke open at the bottom, where the thawing pheasant had dampened the paper. Groceries and books tumbled onto the steps, some rolling of their own accord to the landing below, others being transported there by the moving stairs and forming a neat little pile. Only the jam jar had been broken. He stacked the groceries in the corner of the landing, except for the half-thawed pheasant, which he stuffed into his coat pocket, anticipating that his ascent would take him well past his dinner hour. Physical exertion had dulled his finer feelings. To be precise, his capacity for fear. Like a cross-country runner in his last laps, he thought single-mindedly of the task at hand and made no effort to understand what he had, in any case, already decided was not to be understood. He mounted one flight, rested, mounted, and rested again. Each mount was wearier, each rest longer. He stopped counting the landings after the 28th, and sometime after that, how long he had no idea, his legs gave out and he collapsed to the concrete floor of the landing. His calves were hard, aching knots of muscle. His thighs quivered erratically. He tried to do knee bends and fell backwards. Despite his recent dinner, assuming that it had been recent, he was hungry, and he devoured the entire pheasant, completely thawed now, without being able to tell if it were raw or had been pre-cooked. This is what it's like to be a cannibal, he thought as he fell asleep. Sleeping, he dreamed he was falling down a bottomless pit. Waking, he discovered nothing had changed, except the dull ache in his legs, which had become a sharp pain. Overhead, a single strip of fluorescent lighting snaked down the stairwell. The mechanical purr of the escalators seemed to have heightened to the roar of a Niagara, and their rate of descent seems to have increased proportionately. Fever, he decided. He stood up stiffly and flexed some of the soreness from his muscles. Halfway up the 3rd escalator, his legs gave way under him. He attempted the climb again and succeeded. He collapsed again on the next flight. Lying on the landing where the escalator had deposited him, he realized that his hunger had returned. He also needed to have water, and to let it. The latter necessity he could easily, and without false modesty, satisfy. Also, he remembered the water fountain he had drunk from yesterday, and he found another 3 floors below. It's so much easier going down. His groceries were down there. To go after them now, he would erase whatever progress he had made in his ascent. Perhaps Underwood's main floor was only a few more flights up. Or 100. There was no way to know. Because he was hungry, and because he was tired, and because the futility of mounting endless flights of descending escalators was, as he now considered it, a labour of Sisyphus, he returned, descended, gave in. At first, he allowed the escalator to take him along at its own mild pace, but he soon grew impatient of this. He found that the exercise of running down the steps 3 at a time was not so exhausting as running up. It was refreshing, almost, and by swimming with the current instead of against it, his progress, if such it can be called, was appreciable. In only minutes he was back at his cache of groceries. After eating half the fruitcake and a little cheese, he fashioned his coat into a sort of sling for the groceries, knotting the sleeves together and buttoning it closed. With one hand at the collar and the other about the hem, he could carry all of his food with him. He looked up the descending staircase with a scornful smile, for he had decided with the wisdom of failure to abandon that venture. If the stairs wished to take him down, then down, giddily, he would go. Then down he did go, down dizzily, down, down, and always, it seemed, faster, spinning about lightly on his heels at each landing, so that there was hardly any break in the wild speed of his descent. He whooped and hallooed and laughed to hear his whoopings echo in the narrow, low-vaulted corridors, following him as though they could not keep up his pace. Down, ever deeper down. Twice he slipped at the landings, and once he missed his footing in mid-leap on the escalator, hurtled forward, letting go of the sling of groceries and falling, hands stretched out to cushion him onto the steps which, imperturbably, continued their descent. He must have been unconscious then, or he woke up in a pile of groceries with a split cheek and a splitting headache. The telescoping steps of the escalator gently grazed his heels. He knew then his first moment of terror, a premonition that there was no end to his descent, but this feeling gave way quickly to a laughing fit. "I'm going to hell!" he shouted, though he could not drown with his voice the steady purr of the escalators. "This is the way to hell! Abandon hope, all ye who enter here!" If only I were, he reflected. If that were the case, it would make sense. Not quite orthodox sense, but some sense, a little. Sanity, however, was so integral to his character that neither hysteria nor horror could long have their way with him. He gathered up his groceries again, relieved to find that only the jar of instant coffee had been broken this time. After reflection, he also discarded the can of drip-ground coffee for which he could conceive no use under the present circumstances, and he would allow himself, for the sake of sanity, to conceive of no other circumstances than those. He began a more deliberate descent. He returned to Vanity Fair, reading it as he paced down the down-going steps. He did not let himself consider the extent of the abyss into which he was plunging, and the vicarious excitement of the novel helped him keep his thoughts from his own situation. At page 235, he lunched. That is, he took his second meal of the day, on the remainder of the cheese and fruitcake. At 523 he rested and dined on the English cookies dipped in peanut butter. Perhaps I had better ration my food. If he could regard this absurd dilemma merely as a struggle for survival, another chapter in his own Robinson Crusoe story, he might get to the bottom of this mechanized vortex alive and sane. He thought proudly that many people in his position could not have adjusted, would have gone mad. Of course, he was descending. But he was still sane. He had chosen his course, and now he was following it. There was no night in the stairwell, and scarcely any shadows. He slept when his legs could no longer bear his weight, and his eyes were tearful from reading. Sleeping, He dreamed that he was continuing his descent on the escalators. Waking, his hand resting on the rubber railing that moved along at the same rate as the steps, he discovered this to be the case. Somnambulistically, he had ridden the escalators further down into this mild, interminable hell, leaving behind his bundle of food and even the still unfinished Thackeray novel. Stumbling up the escalators, he began, for the first time, to cry. Without the novel, there was nothing to think of but this. How far? How long did I sleep? His legs, which had only been slightly wearied by his descent, gave out 20 flights up. His spirit gave out soon after. Again he turned around, allowed himself to be swept up by the current, or, more exactly, swept down. The escalator seemed to be travelling more rapidly, the pitch of the steps to be more pronounced, but he no longer trusted the evidence of his senses. I am, perhaps, insane, or sick from hunger. Yet I would have run out of food eventually. This will bring the crisis to a head. Optimism, that's the spirit. Continuing his descent, he occupied himself with a closer analysis of his environment, not undertaken with any hope of bettering his condition, but only for lack of other diversions. The walls and ceilings were hard, smooth, and off-white. The escalator steps were a dull nickel colour, the treads being somewhat shinier, the crevices darker. Did that mean that the treads were polished from use, or were they designed in that fashion? The treads were 1/2 inch wide and spaced apart from each other by the same width. They projected slightly over the edge of each step, resembling somewhat the head of a barber's shears. Whenever he stopped at a landing, his attention would become fixed on the illusory disappearance of the steps, as they sank flush to the floor and slid, tread in groove, into the grilled baseplate. Less and less would he run or even walk down the stairs, content merely to ride his chosen step from top to bottom of each flight, and, at the landing, step, left foot, right, and left again, onto the escalator that would transport him to the floor below. The stairwell now had tunnelled by his calculations miles beneath the department store. So many miles that he began to congratulate himself upon his unsought adventure, wondering if he had established some sort of record. Just so, a criminal will stand in awe of his own baseness and be most proud of his vilest crime, which he believes unparalleled. In the days that followed, when his only nourishment was the water from the fountains provided at every 10th landing, he thought frequently of food, preparing imaginary meals from the store of groceries he had left behind, savouring the ideal sweetness of the honey, the richness of the soup which he would prepare by soaking the powder of the emptied cookie tin, licking the film of gelatin lining the opened can of corned beef. When he thought of the 6 cans of tuna fish, his anxiety became intolerable, for he would have had, no way to open them. Merely to stamp on them would not be enough. What, then? He turned the question over and over in his head, like a squirrel spinning the wheel in its cage, to no avail. Then a curious thing happened. He quickened, again, the speed of his descent, faster now than when he had first done this, eagerly, headlong, absolutely heedless. The several landings seemed to flash by like a montage of flight, each scarcely perceived before the next was before him. A demonic, pointless race. And why? He was running, so he thought, towards his store of groceries, either believing that they had been left below, or thinking that he was running up. Clearly he was delirious. It did not last. His weakened body could not maintain the frantic pace, and he awoke from his delirium confused and utterly spent. Now began another, more rational delirium, a madness fired by logic. Lying on the landing, rubbing a torn muscle in his ankle, he speculated on the nature, origin, and purpose of the escalators. Reasoned thought was of no more use to him, however, than unreasoning action. Ingenuity was helpless to solve a riddle that had no answer, which was its own reason, self-contained and whole. He, not the escalators, needed an answer. Perhaps his most interesting theory was the notion that these escalators were a kind of exercise wheel, like those found in a squirrel cage, from which, because it was a closed system, there could be no escape. This theory required some minor alterations in his conception of the physical universe, which had always appeared highly Euclidean to him before. A universe in which his descent seemingly along a plumb line was, in fact, describing a loop. This theory cheered him, for he might hope, coming full circle, to return to his store of groceries again, if not to Underwood's. Perhaps in this abstracted state he had passed one or the other already, several times, without observing. There was another, and related theory concerning the measures taken by Underwood's credit department against delinquent accounts. This was merely paranoia. Theories. I don't need theories. I must get on with it. So, favouring his good leg, he continued his descent, although his speculations did not immediately cease. They became, if anything, more metaphysical. They became vague. Eventually, he could regard escalators as being entirely matter-of-fact, requiring no more explanation than, by their sheer existence, they offered him. He discovered that he was losing weight. Being so long without food, by the evidence of his beard he estimated that more than a week had gone by, this was only to be expected. Yet there was another possibility that he could not exclude, that he was approaching the centre of the earth, where, as he understood, all things were weightless. Now that, he thought, is something worth striving for. He had discovered a goal. On the other hand, he was dying, a process he did not give all the attention it deserved. Unwilling to admit this eventually, and yet not so foolish as to admit any other, he sidestepped the issue by pretending to hope. Maybe someone will rescue me, he hoped. But his hope was as mechanical as the escalators he rode, and tended, in much the same way, to sink. Waking and sleeping were no longer distinct states of which he could say, "Now I am sleeping," or "Now I am awake." Sometimes he would discover himself descending and be unable to tell whether he had been waked from sleep or roused from inattention. He hallucinated. A woman, loaded with packages from Underwood's and wearing a trim pillbox-style hat, came down the escalator toward him, turned around on the landing, high heels clicking smartly, and rode away without even nodding to him. More and more, when he awoke or was roused from his stupor, he found himself, instead of hurrying to his goal, lying on a landing, weak, dazed, and beyond hunger. Then he would crawl to the down-going escalator and pull himself onto one of the steps, with which he would ride to the bottom, sprawled head foremost, hands and shoulders braced against the treads to keep him from skittering bumpily down. At the bottom, he thought. At the bottom. I will. When I get there. From the bottom, which he conceived of as the centre of the earth, there would be literally nowhere to go but up. Probably another chain of escalators, ascending escalators, but preferably an elevator. It was important to believe in a bottom. Thought was becoming as difficult, as demanding and painful as once his struggle to ascend had been. His perceptions were fuzzy. He did not know what was real and what imaginary. He thought he was eating, and discovered he was gnawing at his hands. He thought he had come to the bottom. It was a large, high-ceilinged room. Signs pointed to another escalator, ascending, but there was a chain across it and a small typed announcement. "Out of order. Please bear with us while the escalators are being repaired. Thank you. The management." He laughed weakly. He devised a way to open the tuna fish cans. He would slip the cans sideways between the projecting treads of the escalator just at the point where the steps were sinking flush to the floor. Either the escalator would split the can open, or the can would jam the escalator. Perhaps, if one escalator were jammed, the whole chain of them would stop. He should have thought of that before, but he was, nevertheless, quite pleased to have thought of it at all. I might have escaped. His body seems to weigh so little now. He must have come hundreds of miles. Thousands. Again he descended. Then he was lying at the foot of the escalator. His head rested on the cold metal of the base plate, and he was looking at his hand, the fingers of which were pressed into the creviced grill. One after another, in perfect order, the steps of the escalator slipped into these crevices, tread in groove, rasping at his fingertips, occasionally tearing away a sliver of his flesh. That was the last thing he remembered. The end. Backrooms ain't got nothing on this. I think it was like obviously Backrooms is not a new thing. As a concept, it's been around for a long time. You never liked escalators? The end? Yeah. To me, this was written, when was this written? The page I have doesn't, 1964. So, yeah, firstly, I don't know that this, I've put this under the category of sci-fi because I'm pretty sure I first read this in a sci-fi short story collection. It's literally just a guy on an escalator as seemingly some kind of metaphor for poverty and depression. If you haven't read A Short Stay in Hell by Stephen Peck, you need to. Very similar vibes. Hell yeah, hit me up with that on the Discord because I will forget it. I've had nightmares about escalators loads of times during your life. Yeah, for me, I don't want to sit and talk about it too long because I've got more stuff to read. But I don't make the Backrooms comparison too lightly because I feel like this to me was my first encounter, and I say published seemingly or in 1964, I think it said, and I read it. I would have been under the age of 15, so you're looking at nearly 30 odd years ago, and this to me is what the whole the Backrooms, it's what upsets me about this is what I feel like Backrooms stories, the good ones have, is just this sort of blank, bland, dreary, repetitive, fluorescent lit mundanity, literally the overwhelming, crushing nothingness. Not a monster chasing you through a creepy liminal space. You say liminal, you just mean office or airport, but this is this is exactly a liminal space because you can only move through it, but it never ends, and that's what this is to me, and that's why this story has stayed with me so much. Yeah, it's real depressing. It's a real downer. And I don't know. It's haunting in exactly the way that I want a story to be like this to be haunting. space that looks like it's made for humans, but it's very much not made for humans. I For that, I think of different things. That sort of thing. I think of stories like Rendezvous with Rama by Arthur C. Clarke, where there's this giant, like, inscrutable space object passing through the system, and there's like an expedition. It's again years since I've read it. Like an expedition made, and like the team go inside it, and it's just this weird space, and they're trying to understand it. Like, there's nothing. It's just a structure, and there is stuff inside, and they're kind of trying to map like human ideals and expectations onto it. Like, I guess these are homes. I think they kind of look like homes, but they're the wrong kind of shape, and they're not quite configured how we would. Maybe they're homes and stuff. That's what I think of for something that's made for humans, but it's very much not made for humans, or looks like it's made for humans, but it's not. Which it's probably not. I'm just trying to think off the top of my head. It's more just the. I'm trying to find the right words for it, because I want to lean for like surreal or something, but it's like not in the traditional sense. Space that reminds you of the futility and smallness of human endeavor, like trying to swim in molasses. Yeah. It's, like there's the. It's the opposite of what you meant before. Yeah, I think it's probably just me like misunderstanding what you're going for, or just going another direction. So yeah, real but wrong. Yeah, that's a good concise way to put it. Like, it's an escalator. We can all recognize what an escalator is. I don't think I'm missing too many people if I say we've all been on an escalator, right? So you can recognize that, the feeling, the sensation. But immediately one that goes on for as long as he notices it going right at the start, one that's gone down like 15 floors below the building, is it instantly like, hang on, that's wrong. That's weird, and that's gone too far. And I think you're right. This is the sort of thing that liminal spaces was supposed to evoke. Yeah, like that's always been my feeling. I think that's where, when I started seeing like backrooms things, and be like, oh, well, that's really cool. This is a neat concept. This is because I know it kind of grew up out of SCP, and I've been, as frankly, other stuff that I'm planning to read, I think, is tangentially related to SCP, because Quantum, who writes SCP articles. But I've not actually, myself, I'm like secondary, tertiary sources and stuff. I've not like sat and read SCP entries, but I've read things that have been like derived from those, or by people who also contribute to that, and so on. Severance has a great liminal aesthetic. Yeah, exactly. And will we be reading There Is No Anti-Memetics Division? Well, I was going to say no in a really dramatic fashion. That is literally only because last year, was it last year, or was it 2 years ago? It may have one of these in the past, and it's available on our YouTube channel. I have read the first, I want to say 2 chapters of There Is No Anti-Memetics Division. It is a fantastic book. I highly recommend it. It's getting a full published, like, it's in 2023. Damn. Yes. So I have read some of that on here already. And yeah, firstly, if you would like to hear that read, it exists on a previous VOD on our YouTube channel. Yeah, the rewrite, I really want to get it. I love that book. Also, if you're familiar with it, like, there's a lot in there that would be borderline impossible to read on stream without just going line of redacted text, line of redacted text, line of redacted text, head explode, line of redacted text, that kind of thing. So yes, but I'm a big fan of Quantum. His writing, Anti-Memetics Division is a banger of a story. The stream broke or your internet broke? Oh, I hope the stream didn't break. I haven't noticed any problem. I think there's only 2 chapters. It's been a while since I read it. So my fun story about that is I was reading it on my phone, on the Kindle app on my phone, and it broke. I literally couldn't turn to the next page without the app crashing, which, due to the subject nature of the book, I found very funny to not be able to read my book about self-redacting information because the app in which I was trying to read it kept crashing. I tweeted about it on Twitter at the time because, you know, it was before it was owned by a complete asshole, and the author himself like saw it and was like, oh, yo, hey, let me help you troubleshoot my book. And it turned out all I needed to do was just reinstall the Kindle app. But yeah, that's just my fun story. Is like, oh, this is very ironic. It's frustrating, but it's ironic. So I now own a paperback copy of it, and yeah, the rewrite I'm looking forward to. I hope it goes well. What I do have though in the second half of this is I was going to read the other one of his other short stories, Lena, or M.M. Acevedo, which I don't think I've read on here before, and I've definitely talked about because it's great. But right, let's go on to the next story, which I don't. Yeah, I think depression-wise, it's not as bad as the last one. But this is, I guess, similarly going back to the roots. This is the first of the Philip K. Dick block. So yeah, and it's one I actually only today decided to add to this list. Oh, it's going to be a long stream, but that's fine. Let's go for it. Right, this one I don't have a text. I haven't found a text. If someone can find a copy of it, I'll put the name in chat. But I don't have a text. But yeah, if someone wants to find, if someone does find one, and not like a dodgy one, because again, these are all ones that are not yet in the public domain, and so therefore don't go finding, like, you know, I found a PDF that someone uploaded of the book that you don't. But this is that, and if it's just like stuck up on some sci-fi blog somewhere, then yeah, feel free to drop that link in chat. But this, yeah, this is a short story by one of my favourite authors, Philip K. Dick. It's called I Hope I Shall Arrive Soon. After takeoff, the ship routinely monitored the condition of these 60 people sleeping in its cryonic tanks. One malfunction showed that of Person 9. His EEG revealed brain activity. Shit, the ship said to itself. Complex homeostatic devices locked into circuit feed, and the ship contacted Person 9. You are slightly awake, the ship said, utilizing the psychotronic route. There was no point in rousing Person 9 to full consciousness. After all, the flight would last a decade. Virtually unconscious, but unfortunately still able to think, Person 9 thought, someone is addressing me. He said, Where am I located? I don't see anything. You are in faulty cryonic suspension, he said. Then I shouldn't be able to hear you. Faulty, I said. That's the point. You can hear me. Do you know your name? Victor Cummings, bring me out of this. We are in flight. Then put me under. Just a moment. The ship examined the cryonic mechanisms. It scanned and surveyed, and then it said, I will try. Time passed. Victor Cummings, unable to see anywhere, to anything, unaware of his body, found himself still conscious. Lower my temperature, he said. He could not hear his voice. Perhaps he only imagined he spoke. Colours floated toward him and then rushed at him. He liked the colours. They reminded him of a child's paint box. The semi-animated kind, an artificial life form. He had used them in school 200 years ago. I can't put you under, the voice of the ship sounded inside Kemming's head. The malfunction is too elaborate. I can't correct it and I can't repair it. You will be conscious for 10 years. The semi-animated colours rushed toward him, but now they possessed a sinister quality, supplied to them by his own fear. Oh my God, he said. 10 years. The colours darkened. As Victor Kemmings lay paralysed, surrounded by dismal flickerings of light, the ship explained to him its strategy. This strategy did not represent a decision on its part. The ship had been programmed to seek this solution in case of a malfunction of this sort. What I will do, the voice of the ship came to him, is feed you sensory stimulation. The peril to you is sensory deprivation. If you are conscious for 10 years without sensory data, your mind will deteriorate. When we reach the LR4 system, you will be a vegetable. Well, what do you intend to feed me? Kemmings said in panic. What do you have in your information storage banks? All the video soap operas of the last century? Wake me up and I'll walk around. There is no air in me, the ship said. Nothing for you to eat. No one to talk to, since everyone else is under. Kemmings said, I can talk to you. We can play chess. Not for 10 years. Listen to me. I say I have no food and no air. You must remain as you are. A bad compromise, but one forced on us. You are talking to me now. I have no particular information stored. Here is policy in these situations. I will feed you your own buried memories, emphasizing the pleasant ones. You possess 206 years of memories, and most of them have sunk down into your unconscious. This is a splendid source of sensory data for you to receive. Be of good cheer. This situation, which you are in, is not unique. It has never happened within my domain before, but I am programmed to deal with it. Relax and trust me. I will see that you are provided with a world. They should have warned me, Kemmings said, before I agreed to emigrate. Relax, the ship said. He relaxed, but he was terribly frightened. Theoretically, he should have gone under, into the successful cryonic suspension, then awakened a moment later at his star of destination, or rather the planet, the colony planet of that star. Everyone else aboard the ship lay in an unknowing state. He was the exception, as if bad karma had attacked him for obscure reasons. Worst of all, he had to depend totally on the goodwill of the ship. Suppose it elected to feed him monsters. The ship could terrorize him for 10 years. 10 objective years, and undoubtedly more from a subjective standpoint. He was, in effect, totally in the ship's power. Did interstellar ships enjoy such a situation? He knew little about interstellar ships. His field was microbiology. Let me think, he said to himself. My first wife, Martine, the lovely little French girl who wore jeans and a red shirt open at the waist and cooks delicious crepes. I hear, the ship said. So be it. The rushing colours resolved themselves into coherent, stable shapes. A building. A little, old, yellow wooden house that he had owned when he was 19 years old in Wyoming. Wait, he said in panic. The foundation was bad. It was on a mud sill, and the roof leaked. But he saw the kitchen, and with the table that he had built himself, and he felt glad. You will not know, after a little while, the ship said, that I am feeding you your own buried memories. I haven't thought about that house in a century, he said wonderingly. Entranced, he made out his old electric drip coffee pot with the box of paper filters beside it. This is the house where Martine and I lived, he realized. Martine, he said aloud. I'm on the phone, Martine said from the living room. The ship said, I will cut in only where there is an emergency. I will be monitoring you, however, to be sure you are in a satisfactory state. Don't be afraid. Turn down the rear right burner on the stove, Martine called. He could hear her and yet not see her. He made his way from the kitchen through the dining room and into the living room. At the VF, Martine stood in rapt conversation with her brother. She wore shorts and she was barefoot. Through the front windows of the living room he could see the street. A commercial vehicle was trying to park without success. It's a warm day, he thought. I should turn on the air conditioner. He seated himself on the old sofa as Martine continued her VF conversation, and he found himself gazing at his most cherished possession, a framed poster on the wall above Martine. Gilbert Shelton's Fat Freddy Says drawing in which Freddy Freak sits with his cat on his lap, and Fat Freddy is trying to say, "Speed kills," but he is so wired on speed. He holds in his hands every kind of amphetamine tablet, pill, spansule, and capsule that exists, but he can't say it, and the cat is gritting his teeth and wincing in a mixture of dismay and disgust. The poster is signed by Gilbert Shelton himself. Hemming's best friend, Ray Torrance, give it to him and Martine as a wedding present. It is worth thousands. It is signed by the artist back in the 1980s, long before either Victor Hemmings or Martine lived. If we ever run out of money, Hemmings thought to himself, we could sell the poster. It was not a poster. It was the poster. Martine adored it. The fabulous furry freak brothers, from the golden age of a long-ago society. No wonder he loved Martine so. She herself loved back, loved the beauties of the world, and treasured and cherished them as she treasured and cherished him. It was a protective love that nourished but did not stifle. It had been her idea to frame the poster. He would have tacked it up on the wall, so stupid was he. "Hi," Martine said, off the VF now. "What are you thinking?" "Just that you keep alive what you love," he said. "I think that's what you're supposed to do," Martine said. "Are you ready for dinner? Open some red wine, a Cabernet." "Will an 07 do?" he said, standing up. He felt then like taking hold of his wife and hugging her. "Either an 07 or a 12. She trotted past him, through the dining room and into the kitchen. Going down into the cellar, he began to search among the bottles, which, of course, lay flat. Musty air and dampness. He liked the smell of the cellar. But then he noticed the redwood planks lying half buried in the dirt, and he thought, I know I've got to get a concrete slab poured. He forgot about the wine and went over to the far corner where the dirt was piled highest. Bending down, he poked at a board. He poked with a trowel, and then he thought, where did I get this trowel? I didn't have it a minute ago. The board crumbled against the trowel. His whole house is collapsing, he realized. Oh, Christ's sake. I better tell Martine. Going back upstairs, the wine forgotten, he started to say to her that the foundations of the house were dangerously decayed, but Martine was nowhere in sight, and nothing cooked on the stove. No pots, no pans. Amazed, he put his hands on the stove and found it cold. Wasn't she just cooking? He asked himself. "Martine!" he said loudly. No response. Except for himself, the house was empty. Empty, he thought, and collapsing. Oh my God. He seated himself at the kitchen table and felt the chair give slightly under him. It did not give much, but he felt it. He felt the sagging. I'm afraid, he thought. Where did she go? He returned to the living room. Maybe she went next door to borrow some spices or butter or something, he reasoned. Nonetheless, panic now filled him. He looked at the poster. It was unframed, and the edges had been torn. I know she framed it, he thought. He ran across the room to it, to examine it closely. Faded. The artist's signature had faded. He could scarcely make it out. She insisted on framing it, and under glare-free, reflection-free glass. But it isn't framed, and it's torn. The most precious thing we own. Suddenly he found himself crying. It amazed him, his tears. Martine is gone. The poster is deteriorated. The house is crumbling away. Nothing is cooking on the stove. This is terrible, he thought, and I don't understand it. The ship understood it. The ship had been carefully monitoring Victor Kemming's brainwave patterns, and the ship knew that something had gone wrong. The waveforms showed agitation and pain. I must get him out of this feed circuit or I will kill him, the ship decided. Where does the flaw lie? It asked itself. Worry dormant in the man. Underlying anxieties. Perhaps if I intensify the signal. I will use the same source, but amp up the charge. What has happened is that massive subliminal insecurities have taken possession of him. The fault is not mine, but lies instead in his psychological makeup. I will try an earlier period in his life, the ship decided, before the neurotic anxieties got laid down. In the backyard, Victor scrutinized a bee that had gotten itself trapped in a spider's web. The spider wound up the bee with great care. That's wrong, Victor thought. I'll let the bee loose. Reaching up, he took hold of the encapsulated bee, drew it from the web and, scrutinizing it carefully, began to unwrap it. The bee stung him. It felt like a little patch of flame. Why did it sting me? He wondered. I was letting it go. He went indoors to his mother and told her, but she did not listen. She was watching television. His finger hurt where the bee had stung up, but more important, he did not understand why the bee would attack its rescuer. I won't do that again, he said to himself. Put some Bactine on it, his mother said at last, roused from watching the TV. He had begun to cry. It was unfair. It made no sense. He was perplexed and dismayed that he felt a hatred towards small living things because they were dumb. They didn't have any sense. He left the house, played for a time on his swings, his slide, in his sandbox, and then he went into the garage because he heard a strange flapping, whirring sound, like a kind of a fan. Inside the gloomy garage, he found that a bird was fluttering against the cobwebbed rear window, trying to get out. Below it, the cat, Dorky, leaped and leaped, trying to reach the bird. He picked up the cat. The cat extended its body and its front legs. It extended its jaws and bit into the bird. At once the cat scrambled down and ran off with the still fluttering bird. Victor ran into the house. Dorky caught a bird, he told his mother. That goddamn cat! His mother took the broom from the closet in the kitchen and ran outside, trying to find Dorky. The cat had concealed itself under the bramble bushes. She could not reach it with the broom. I'm going to get rid of that cat, his mother said. Victor did not tell her that he had arranged for the cat to catch the bird. He watched in silence as his mother tried to pry Dorky out from her hiding place. Dorky was crunching up the bird. He could hear the sound of breaking bones, small bones. He felt a strange feeling, as if he should tell his mother what he had done, and yet if he told her she would punish him. I won't do that again, he said to himself. His face, he realized, had turned red. What if his mother figured it out? What if she had some secret way of knowing? Dorky couldn't tell her, and the bird was dead. No one would ever know. He was safe. But he felt bad. That night he could not eat his dinner. Both his parents noticed. They thought he was sick. They took his temperature. He said nothing about what he had done. His mother told his father about Dorky, and they decided to get rid of Dorky. Seated at the table, listening, Victor began to cry. "All right," his father said gently. "We won't get rid of her. It's natural for a cat to catch a bird." The next day, he sat playing in his sandbox. Some plants grew up through the sand. He broke them off. Later, his mother told him that had been a wrong thing to do. Alone in the backyard, in his sandbox, he sat with a pail of water, forming a small mound of wet sand. The sky, which had been blue and clear, became by degrees overcast. A shadow passed over him and he looked up. He sensed a presence around him, something vast that could think. "You are responsible for the death of a bird," the presence thought. He could understand its thoughts. "I know," he said. He wished then that he could die, that he could replace the bird and die for it, leaving it as it had been, fluttering against the cobwebbed window of the garage. The bird wanted to fly and eat and live, the presence thought. "Yes," he said miserably. "You must never do that again," the presence told him. "I'm sorry," he said, and wept. This is a very neurotic person, the ship realized. I am having an awful lot of trouble finding happy memories. There is too much fear in him and too much guilt. He has buried it all, and yet it is still there, worrying him like a dog worrying a rag. Where can I go in his memories to find him solace? I must come up with 10 years of memories, or his mind will be lost. Perhaps, the ship thought, the error that I am making is in the area of choice on my part. I should allow him to select his own memories. However, the ship realized this will allow an element of fantasy to enter, and that is not usually good. Still, I will try the segment dealing with his first marriage once again, the ship decided. He really loved Martine. Perhaps this time, if I keep the intensity of the memories at a greater level, the entropic factor can be abolished. What happened was a subtle vitiation of the remembered world, a decay of structure. I will try to compensate for that. So be it. "Do you suppose Gilbert Shelton really signed this?" Martine said pensively. She stood before the poster, her arms folded. She rocked back and forth slightly, as if seeking a better perspective on the brightly coloured drawing hanging on their living room wall. "I mean, it could have been forged by a dealer somewhere along the line, during Shelton's lifetime or after." "The letter of authentication," Victor Cummings reminded her. "Oh, that's right." She smiled her warm smile. "Ray gave us the letter that goes with it." "But suppose the letter is a forgery? What we need is another letter certifying that the first letter is authentic." Laughing, she walked away from the poster. "Ultimately," Cummings said, "we would have to have Gilbert Shelton here personally to testify that he signed it." "Maybe he wouldn't know. There's that story about that man bringing the Picasso picture to Picasso and asking him if it was authentic, and Picasso immediately signed it and said, 'Now it's authentic.'" She put her arm around Cummings and, standing on tiptoe, kissed him on the cheek. "It's genuine. Ray wouldn't have given us a forgery. He's the leading expert on counterculture art of the 20th century. Do you know that he owns an actual lid of dope? It's preserved under—" "Ray's dead," Victor said. "What?" She gazed at him in astonishment. Do you mean something happened to him since we last—" "He's been dead 2 years," Cummings said. "I was responsible. I was driving the buzz car. I wasn't cited by the police, but it was my fault." "Ray is living on Mars." She stared at him. "I know I was responsible. I never told you. I never told anyone. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do it. I saw it flapping against the window, and Dorky was trying to reach it, and I lifted Dorky up, and I don't know why, but Dorky grabbed it. Sit down, Victor. Martine led him to the overstuffed chair and made him seat himself. Something's wrong, she said. I know, he said. Something terrible is wrong. I'm responsible for the taking of a life, a precious life that can never be replaced. I'm sorry. I wish I could make it okay, but I can't. After a pause, Martine said, Call Ray. The cat, he said. What cat? There, he pointed. In the poster on Fat Freddy's lap. That's Dorky. Dorky killed Ray. Silence. The presence told me, Cummings said. It was God. I didn't realize it at the time, but God saw me commit the crime, the murder, and he will never forgive me. His wife stared at him numbly. God sees everything you do, Cummings said. He sees even the falling sparrow. Only in this case it didn't fall. It was grabbed out of the air and torn down. God is tearing this house down, which is my body, to pay me back for what I've done. We should have had a building contractor look at this house over before we bought it. It's just falling goddamn to pieces. In a year there won't be anything left of it. Don't you believe me? Martine faltered. Watch. Cummings reached up his arms towards the ceiling. He stood. He reached. He could not touch the ceiling. He walked to the wall and then, after a pause, put his hand through the wall. Martine screamed. The ship aborted the memory retrieval instantly, but the harm had been done. He has integrated his earthly fears and guilts into one interwoven grid, the ship said to itself. There is no way I can serve up a pleasant memory to him because he instantly contaminates it, however pleasant the original experience in itself was. This is a serious situation, the ship decided. The man is already showing signs of psychosis, and we are hardly into the trip. Years lie ahead of him. After allowing itself time to think the situation through, the ship decided to contact Victor Cummings once again. Mr. Cummings, the ship said. I'm sorry, Cummings said. I didn't mean to foul up those retrievals. You did a good job, but I... Just a moment, the ship said. I am not equipped to do psychiatric reconstruction of you. I am a simple mechanism, that's all. What is it you want? Where do you want to be, and what do you want to be doing? I want to arrive at our destination, Cummings said. I want this trip to be over. Ah, the ship thought. That is a solution. One by one, the cryonic systems shut down. One by one, the people returned to life. Among them, Victor Cummings. What amazed him was the lack of a sense of the passage of time. He had entered the chamber, lain down, had felt the membrane cover him and the temperature begin to drop. And now he stood on the ship's external platform, the unloading platform, gazing down at a verdant planetary landscape. This, he realized, is LR4-6, the colony world to which I have come in order to begin a new life. Looks good, a heavy-set woman beside him said. Yes, he said, and felt the newness of the landscape rush up at him, its promise of a beginning. Something better than he had known the past 200 years. I am a fresh person in a fresh world, he thought, and he felt glad. Colours raced at him, like those of a child's semi-animate kit. St. Elmo's fire, he realized. That's right, there is a great deal of ionization in the planet's atmosphere. A free light show, such as they had back in the 20th century. Mr. Cummings, a voice said. An elderly man had come up beside him to speak to him. Did you dream? During the suspension? Cummings said. No, not that I can remember. I think I dreamed, the elderly man said. Would you take my arm on the descent ramp? I feel unsteady. The air seems thin. Do you find it thin? Don't be afraid, Cummings said to him. He took the elderly man's arm. I'll help you down the ramp. Look, there's a guide coming this way. He'll arrange our processing for us. It's part of the package. We'll be taken to a resort hotel and given first-class accommodations. Read your brochure. He smiled at the uneasy older man to reassure him. You'd think our muscles would be nothing but flab after 10 years in suspension, the elderly man said. That's like freezing peas, Cummings said, holding on to the timid older man. He descended the ramp to the ground. You can store them forever if you get them cold enough. My name's Shelton, the elderly man said. What? Cummings said, halting. A strange feeling moved through him. Don Shelton. The elderly man extended his hand reflexively. Cummings accepted it and they shook. What's the matter, Mr. Cummings? Are you all right? Sure, he said. I'm fine, but hungry. I'd like to get something to eat. I'd like to get to our hotel, where I can take a shower and change my clothes. He wondered where their baggage could be found. Probably it would take the ship an hour to unload it. The ship was not particularly intelligent. In an intimate, confidential tone, elderly Mr. Shelton said, You know what I brought with me? A bottle of wild turkey bourbon. The finest bourbon on earth. I'll bring it over to our hotel room and we'll share it. He nudged Cummings. I don't drink, Cummings said. Only wine. He wondered if there were any good wines here on this distant colony world. Not distant now, he reflected. It is Earth that's distant. I should have done like Mr. Shelton and brought a few bottles with me. Shelton. What did the name remind him of? Something in his far past, in his early years. Something precious, along with good wine, and a pretty, gentle young woman making crepes in an old-fashioned kitchen. Aching memories. Memories that hurt. Presently, he stood by the bed in his hotel room, his suitcase open. He had begun to hang up his clothes. In the corner of the room, a TV hologram showed a newscaster. He ignored it, but, liking the sound of a human voice, he kept it on. Did I have any dreams? He asked himself. During these past years? His hand hurt. Gazing down, he saw a red welt, as if he had been stung. A bee stung me, he realized. But when? How? While I lay in cryonic suspension? Impossible. Yet he could see the welt, and he could feel the pain. I better get something to put on it, he realized. There's undoubtedly a robot doctor in the hotel. It's a first-rate hotel. When the robot doctor had arrived and was treating the bee sting, Cummings said, I got this as punishment for killing a bird. Really? The robot doctor said. Everything that ever meant anything to me has been taken away from me, Cummings said. Martine, the poster, my little old house with the wine cellar. We had everything, and now it's gone. Martine left me because of the bird. The bird you killed? The robot doctor said. God punished me. He took away all that was precious to me because of my sin. It wasn't Dorky's sin, it was my sin. But you were just a little boy, the robot doctor said. How did you know that? Cummings said. He pulled his hand away from the robot doctor's grasp. Something's wrong. You shouldn't have known that. Your mother told me, the robot doctor said. My mother didn't know, the robot doctor said. She figured it out. There was no way the cat could have reached the bird without your help. So all the time that I was growing up, she knew, but she never said anything. You can forget about it, the robot doctor said. Cummings said, I don't think you exist. There is no possible way that you could know these things. I'm still in cryonic suspension, and the ship is still feeding me my own buried memories, so I won't become psychotic from sensory deprivation. You could hardly have a memory of completing the trip. Wish fulfillment, then. It's the same thing. I'll prove it to you. Do you have a screwdriver? Why? Cummings said. I'll remove the back of the TV set, and you'll see. There's nothing inside it. No components, no parts, no chassis, nothing. I don't have a screwdriver. A small knife, then. I can see one in your surgical supply bag. Bending, Cummings lifted up a small scalpel. This will do. If I show you, will you believe me? If there's nothing inside the TV cabinet. Squatting down, Cummings removed the screws holding the back panel of the TV set in place. The panel came loose, and he set it down on the floor. There was nothing inside the TV cabinet, and yet the colour hologram continued to fill a quarter of the hotel room, and the voice of the newscaster issued forth from his three-dimensional image. "Admit you're the ship," Cummings said to the robot doctor. "Oh dear," the robot doctor said. "Oh dear," the ship said to itself. "And I've got almost 10 years of this lying ahead of me. He is hopelessly contaminating his experiences with childhood guilt. He imagines that his wife left him because when he was 4 years old he helped a cat catch a bird. The only solution would be for Martine to return to him, but how am I going to arrange that? He may not still be alive. On the other hand," the ship reflected, "maybe she is alive. Maybe she could be induced to do something to save her former husband's sanity. People by and large have very positive traits, and 10 years from now it will take a lot to save, or rather restore his sanity. It will take something drastic, something I myself cannot do alone." Meanwhile, there was nothing to be done but recycle the wish-fulfillment arrival of the ship at its destination. "I will run him through the arrival," the ship decided, "then wipe his conscious memory clean and run him through it again. The only positive aspect of this," it reflected, "is that it will give me something to do, which may help preserve my sanity." Lying in cryonic suspension, faulty cryonic suspension, Victor Cummings imagined once again that the ship was touching down and he was being brought back to consciousness. "Did you dream?" a heavy-set woman asked him as the group of passengers gathered on the outer platform. "I have the impression that I dreamed. Early scenes from my life, over a century ago." "None that I can remember," Cummings said. He was eager to reach his hotel. A shower and a change of clothes would do wonders for his morale. He felt slightly depressed and wondered why. "There's our guide," the elderly lady said. "They're going to escort us to our accommodations." "It's in the package," Cummings said. His depression remained. The others seemed so spirited, so full of life, but over him only a weariness lay, a weighing down sensation, as if the gravity of this colony planet were too much. Too much for him. "Maybe that's it," he said to himself, but according to the brochure, the gravity here matched Earth's. That was one of the attractions. Puzzled, he made his way slowly down the ramp, step by step, holding onto the rail. "I don't really deserve a new chance at life anyhow," he realized. "I'm just going through the motions. I'm not like these other people. There is something wrong with me. I cannot remember what it is, but nonetheless it is there. In me. A bitter sense of pain. Of lack of worth." An insect landed on the back of Cummings' right hand. An old insect, weary with flight. He halted, watched it crawl across his knuckles. "I could crush it," he thought. "It's so obviously infirm. It won't live much longer anyhow." He crushed it, and felt great inner horror. "What have I done?" he asked himself. "My first moment here and I have wiped out a little life. Is this my new beginning?" Turning, he gazed back up at the ship. "Maybe I ought to go back," he thought. "Have them freeze me forever. I am a man of guilt, a man who destroys." Tears filled his eyes. And within its sentient works, the interstellar ship moaned. During the 10 long years remaining in the trip to the LR4 system, the ship had plenty of time to track down Martine Cummings. It explained the situation to her. She had emigrated to a vast orbiting dome in the Sirius system, found her situation unsatisfactory, and was en route back to Earth. Roused from her own cryonic suspension, she listened intently, and then agreed to be at the colony, world LR4-6, when her husband arrived, if it was at all possible. Fortunately, it was possible. "I don't think he'll recognize me," Martine said to the ship. "I've allowed myself to age. I don't really approve of entirely halting the aging process." "He'll be lucky if he recognizes anything," the ship thought. At the intersystem spaceport on the colony world of LR4-6, Martine stood waiting for the people aboard the ship to appear on the outer platform. She wondered if she would recognize her former husband. She was a little afraid, but she was glad that she had gotten to LR4-6 in time. It had been close. Another week and his ship would have arrived before hers. "Luck is on my side," she said to herself, and scrutinized the newly landed interstellar ship. People appeared on the platform. She saw him. Victor had changed very little. As he came down the ramp, holding onto the railings as if weary and hesitant, she came up to him, her hands thrust deep in her pockets of her coat. She felt shy, and when she spoke she could hardly hear her own voice. "Hi, Victor," she managed to say. He halted, gazed at her. "I know you." "It's Martine," she said. Holding out his hand, he said, smiling, "You heard about the trouble on the ship?" "The ship contacted me." She took his hand and held it. "What an ordeal." "Yeah," he said, recirculating memories forever. "Did I ever tell you about a bee that I was trying to extricate from a spider's web when I was 4 years old? The idiotic bee stung me." He bent down and kissed her. "It's good to see you," he said. "Did the ship... It said it would try to have you here, but it wasn't sure if you could make it." As they walked toward the terminal building, Martine said, "I was lucky. I managed to get a transfer to a military vessel, a high-velocity drive ship that just shot along like a mad thing. A new propulsion system entirely." Victor Cummings said, "I have spent more time in my own unconscious mind than any other human in history. Worse than early 20th century psychoanalysis. And the same material. Over and over again. Did you know I was scared of my mother?" "I was scared of your mother," Martine said. They stood at the baggage depot waiting for the luggage to appear. "This looks like a really nice little planet. Much better than where I was. I haven't been happy at all." "So maybe there's a cosmic plan," he said, grinning. "You look great." "I'm old." "Medical science, it was my decision. I like older people." She surveyed him. He has been hurt a lot by the cryonic malfunction, she said to herself. "I can see it in his eyes. They look broken. Broken eyes, torn down into pieces by fatigue and defeat, as if his buried early memories swam up and destroyed him. But it's over, he thought, and I did get here in time." At the bar in the terminal building, they sat having a drink. "This old man got me to try wild turkey bourbon," Victor said. "It's amazing bourbon. It's the best on earth. He says it's the best on earth. He brought a bottle with him from..." His voice died into silence. "One of your fellow passengers," Martine finished. "I guess so," he said. "Well, you can stop thinking of the birds and the bees," Martine said. "Sex," he said, and laughed. "Being stung by a bee, helping a cat catch a bird. That's all past." "That cat," Victor said, "has been dead 182 years. I figured it out while they were bringing us out of suspension. Probably just as well. Dorky. Dorky the killer cat. Nothing like Fat Freddy's cat." "I had to sell the poster," Martine said, finally. He frowned. "Remember," he said, "you let me have it when we split up, which I always thought was really good of you. How much did you get for it?" "A lot. I should pay you something like..." She calculated. "Taking inflation into account, I should pay you about $2 million. "Would you consider," he said, Instead, in place of the money, my share of the sale of the poster, spending some time with me, until I get used to this planet. Yes, she said, and she meant it, very much. They finished their drinks, and then, with his luggage transported by robot space cap, made their way to his hotel room. This is a nice room, Martine said, perched on the edge of the bed, and it has a hologram TV. Turn it on. There's no use turning it on, Victor Cummings said. He stood by the open closet, hanging up his shirts. Why not? Cummings said. There's nothing on it. Going over to the TV set, Martine turned it on. A hockey game materialized, projected out into the room in full color, and the sound of the game assailed her ears. It works fine, she said. I know, he said. I can prove it to you. If you have a nail file or something, I'll unscrew the backplate and show you. But I can... Look at this. He paused in his work of hanging up clothes. Watch me put my hand through the wall. He placed the palm of his right hand against the wall. See? His hand did not go through the wall because hands do not go through walls. His hand remained pressed against the wall, unmoving. And the foundation, he said, is rotting away. Come and sit down by me, Martine said. I've lived this often enough now, he said. I've lived this over and over again. I come out of suspension, I walk down the ramp, I get my luggage, sometimes I have a drink at the bar, and sometimes I come directly to my room. Usually I turn on the TV, and then... He came over and held his hands towards her. See where the bee stung me? She saw no mark on his hand. He took his hand and held it. There is no bee sting, she said. And when the robot doctor comes, I borrow a tool from him and take off the backplate of the TV set, to prove to him that it has no chassis, no components in it. And then the ship starts me over again. Victor, she said, look at your hand. This is the first time you've been here, though, he said. Sit down, she said. Okay. He seated himself on the bed beside her, but not too close to her. Won't you sit closer to me? She said. It makes me too sad, he said, remembering you. I really loved you. I wish this was real. Martine said, I will sit with you until it is real for you. I'm going to try reliving the part with the cat, he said, and this time not pick up the cat and not let it get the bird. If I do that, maybe my life will change so that it turns into something happy, something that is real. My real mistake was separating from you. Here, I'll put my hand through you. He placed his hand against her arm. The pressure of his muscles was vigorous. She felt the weight, the physical presence of him against her. See? He said. It goes right through you. And all this, she said, because you killed a bird when you were a little boy. No, he said. All this because of a failure in the temperature regulating assembly aboard the ship. I'm not down in the proper temperature. There's just enough warmth left in my brain cells to permit cerebral activity. He stood up then, stretched, smiled at her. Shall we go get some dinner? He asked. She said, I'm sorry. I'm not hungry. I am. I'm going to have the local seafood. The brochure says it's terrific. Come along anyhow. Maybe when you see the food and smell it, you'll change your mind. Gathering up her coat and purse, she came with him. This is a beautiful little planet, he said. I've explored it dozens of times. I know it thoroughly. We should stop downstairs at the pharmacy for some Bactine, though. My hand. It's beginning to swell and it hurts like hell. He showed her his hand. It hurts more this time than ever before. Do you want me to come back to you? Martine said. Are you serious? Yes, she said. I'll stay with you as long as you want. I agree, we should never have been separated. Victor Cummings said. The poster is torn. What? She said. We should have framed it, he said. We didn't have sense enough to take care of it. Now it's torn, and the artist is dead. The end. And good grief, these are taking way longer than I expected, but I have stuff planned. So I'm gonna quickly punt you all into a break. It's been a long half, so why not take a long break? Poor guy. Yeah, I did glance up and see. Yeah, this could just be adapted as Black Mirror episodes. I mean, yeah, basically that's kind of what Black Mirror is. Like, it's. I would say it's impossible to get to stuff like Black Mirror without works like this, works like Philip K. Dick's writing before it. I mean, Channel 4 did actually do their own series of adaptations. I think it was called like Electric Dreams or something. And I think I'd heard some of them were good, some of them were kind of mid. But yeah, I mean this one is very reminiscent in part of the... Is it like the Christmas special? One of the Christmas specials with John Hamm, where he's like basically ends up trapped in his own brain. You like them? Yeah, I only saw like one or two. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Philip K. Dick's writing. That is no surprise. I've said it like 100 times. And the other fun thing you get, as has been observed in some tweet years ago, that like the adaptations of his works are called like Blade Runner and Paycheck and oh damn it, what other ones are there's Total Recall. And the stories that they're adapted from are called things like We Can Remember It For You Wholesale, or in the tweet the joke's like What's Going On Down at the Brain Factory. And this literally has stories in it called Your Appointment Will Be Yesterday, The Day Mr. Computer Fell Out of Its Tree, A Little Something for Us Tempunauts, Cadbury, The Beaver Who Lacks. Like, that's good old Philip Kindred Dick. I did nearly consider reading The Day Mr. Computer Fell Out of Its Tree, because I don't know when that story was written. There were a few things in it that made me go, yeah, or maybe I won't read this one live on air. But it's a staggeringly prescient piece. What's basically he turned out to be writing about ChatGPT. So, just completely bumbling computers that everyone decided, we'll put this in charge, this sounds great, and yeah, what comes out of that. But yeah, I've got a couple more things that I want to read in the second half. Oh boy, it's going to be a long one. So yeah, go take a break. I'm gonna make it 10 minutes so my voice can have like a bit to recover. And then I'll see you back here for more of these. I hope you're enjoying it. See you in a bit. There's a break button. And we are back. Thank you for sticking around. Planes, you're gonna take off and meow. That's not what you said, but I'm saying that for you. And go out for dinner. Nice. You'll see us if you get back, or when you get back, if we are still online. For my sake, I hope not, but you know, it's possible. By my estimate, what we still have to come is about similar length, hopefully a little bit shorter than what we've done. So I'm gonna like faff less, really, you know, lock in, focus up, get my head in the game, and other such things in the quest for that dub. Let's cook Jesse or something, I don't know. Yeah, that was, and then immediately try to launch myself into a tangent. I don't actually know that I had read that story before. I think today might have been my first time reading it, and it's because I was looking for the origin of the, you know, I've said it 30 times already today, the quotes, you know, reality is that which when you stop believing in it doesn't go away. And apparently it comes from the book that story is collected in, but that is not this book. This is another like volume of collected stories that I'm reading from. So yeah, that's what kind of is looking for that and seeing this title. I was like, oh, well, I'll have a look at this one. Oh, this is neat. Oh, Lucy, yeah, we're in for a wild ride for the Discord music stream tomorrow. There's going to be many things, but chill may not be one of them. Hell yeah, okay, yeah, I said in a message to her, like, I'm looking forward to it. That is, for those of you here, listening here, that is going to be taking place over on our Discord. Lucy's putting together a little classical music radio show for y'all to listen to. So if that sounds like something you'd like to do tomorrow afternoon, I don't think I've set on this balls. No, there we go. No, page down definitely doesn't, so I use like page up and page down to try and set the schedule. Oh, I don't have the, hang on a second. There we go. Oh, how embarrassing. Yeah, I set all the other scenes, well, not all, some of the other scenes up for this, and I haven't actually set this one up, as you can see, so that's why I just started hitting buttons randomly and panicking. Yes, there will not be a PowerPoint, but you will be waving your arms in the air, no camera. Yes. Mainly classical. Neat. I love Ludovico Einaudi, and so I cannot wait to hear wall-to-wall 3 hours of that. And do I just keep this bit going until I see you explode with rage in chat? Like, it's just a real big enjoyer of classical music. I cannot. There we go. I have been gunshot. Yeah. Anyway, I'm wittering now. We need to bang on. This next one. This is the second Philip K. Dick story that I have lined up tonight. It's another one that I've also not looked up a text for, because I don't know that there will be one extant on the internet somewhere. But you're welcome to try. It's another one of my early favourites. I feel like the idea has been probably done better elsewhere, but this is, you know, like I said up the top, the theme of this is some stories that I liked, and I absolutely capitalised that middle K. What? I swear, computer. These are some stories that I liked, and these are ones, some of them, well, okay, that's a lie. I did literally just say the one I just read, I've only read for the first time today. Ignoring those inconsistencies, stories that I have liked, or stories I haven't read before today from authors whose works have been very influential on my own interests. Doesn't pack down neatly into a sentence. Don't turn it into an acronym. But this is one that I have read years ago and stayed with me, and I really enjoyed it. At one point even began just for my own little like thought experiment, workshopping it into like a game idea. I've never made a video game and I'm not about to start. The tags on ISFDB is our Internet Sci-Fi Database are Science Fiction 1, Ants 1, Perception of Reality 1. Honestly, Ants is the most spurious one of those. It is. It's there in the name. And that's about it. But again, if we don't start, we'll never get through it. So, if we're ready and sitting comfortably, let's have another story. This is The Electric Ant by Philip K. Oh, you can't, just as I'm about to read, you can't hit me with ant lips. I'm not gonna be able to explain. Okay, the truncated version of that is that sometimes in the UK, I don't know if we do it anymore, on like, maybe on buses, I'm not sure, because this wasn't my story, this was related to me by someone else, a game dev who I used to follow from Oxford. Actually no, I still follow him on Blue Sky. Not personally. And I just remember him talking about a time that you would have little, like, basically rubbish bins posted around places for you to put, like, slips of paper. And on it was the text, "Unwanted slips." That's okay. It's a fun story. So the text, "Unwanted slips," it was, like, printed twice. And he said that, like, he and a friend once, and I think it must have been the extra, like, personal tangent being that, like, because he's from Oxford, and I think he might have been talking about one that he saw in Oxford, and I was like, wait, yeah, no, I have seen these little paper bins. Someone had scratched off a bunch of the letters on one, and he and a friend saw it, and they now reference it forever, where they had scratched off letters such that it said, "You wanted lips, ant lips." And so now, and I explained this, and like this phrase that stuck with him, since reading him talking about it, has stuck with me, and so now, "You wanted lips, ant lips." It is amazing. It is like, this is why I've had to stop what I was about to do and tell the story, because it's absolutely incredible. And clearly it's, you know, I told Lucy about it and it stuck with her. And now you all get to hear about the ant lips that you wanted. It's frankly an amazing piece of absurdist found poetry. So now you all get to think about ant lips and whether or not you want them. This is not about that. This is not that story. This instead is... I'm never going to find the bookmarks for these when I'm making the VOD. This is The Electric Ant Lips by Philip K. Dick. At 4:15 in the afternoon, TST, Garson Poole woke up in his hospital bed, knew that he lay in a hospital bed in a 3-bed ward, and realized in addition 2 things. That he no longer had a right hand, and that he felt no pain. "They had given me a strong analgesic," he said to himself as he stared at the far wall with its windows showing downtown New York. Webs in which vehicles and peds darted and wheeled glimmered in the late afternoon sun, and the brilliance of the aging light pleased him. "It's not yet out," he thought, "and neither am I." A phone lay on the table beside his bed. He hesitated, then picked it up and dialed for an outside line. A moment later, he was faced by Louis Danceman, in charge of Triplan's activities while he, Garson Poole, was elsewhere. "Thank God you're alive," Danceman said, seeing him, his big, fleshy face with its moon's surface of pockmarks flattened with relief. "I've been calling all—" "I just don't have a right hand," Poole said. "But you'll be okay. I mean, they can graft another one on." "How long have I been here?" Poole said. He wondered where the nurses and doctors had gone to. Why weren't they clucking and fussing about him, making a call? 4 days, Danceman said. "Everything here at the plant is going splunkishly. In fact, we've splunked orders from 3 separate police systems, all here on Terra. 2 in Ohio, 1 in Wyoming. Good, solid orders, with 1/3 in advance and the usual 3-year lease option. Come get me out of here, Poole said. I can't get you out until you get the new hand. I'll have it done later. He wanted desperately to get back to familiar surroundings. Memory of the mercantile squib looming grotesquely on the pilot screen careened at the back of his mind. If he shut his eyes, he felt himself back in his damaged craft as it plunged from one vehicle to another, piling up enormous damage as it went. The kinetic sensations. He winced, recalling them. I guess I'm lucky, he said to himself. Is Sarah Benton there with you? Danceman asked. No. Of course. His personal secretary, if only for job considerations, would be hovering close by, mothering him with her jejune, infantile way. All heavy-set women like to mother people, he thought. And they're dangerous. If they fall on you, they can kill you. Maybe that's what happened to me, he said aloud. Maybe Sarah fell on my squib. No. Tie a rod in the steering fin of your squib. Tie a rod in the steering fin of your squib, split apart during the heavy rush hour and Oh, good grief, I can't read. No. A tie rod in the steering fin of your squib, split apart during the heavy rush hour traffic, and you... I remember. He turned in his bed as the door of the ward opened. A white-clad doctor and 2 blue-clad nurses appeared, making their way towards his bed. I'll talk to you later, Poole said and hung up the phone. He took a deep, expectant breath. You shouldn't be phoning quite so soon, the doctor said as he studied his chart. Mr. Garson Poole, owner of Triplan Electronics, maker of random ident darts that track their prey for a circle radius of 1,000 miles, responding to unique NSF wave patterns. You're a successful man, Mr. Poole. But, Mr. Poole, you're not a man. You're an electric ant. Christ, Poole said, stunned. So we can't really treat you here, now that we've found out. We knew, of course, as soon as we examined your injured right hand. We saw the electronic components, and then we made torso X-rays, and of course they bore out our hypothesis. What, Poole said, is an electric ant? But he knew. He could decipher the term. A nurse said, an organic robot. I see, Poole said. Frigid perspiration rose to the surface of his skin, across all his body. You didn't know, the doctor said. No. Poole shook his head. The doctor said, we get an electric ant every week or so, either brought in here from a squib accident, like yourself, or one seeking voluntary admission. One who, like yourself, has never been told, who has functioned alongside humans, believing itself human. As to your hand, he paused. Forget my hand, Poole said savagely. Be calm. The doctor leaned over him, peered acutely down into Poole's face. We will have a hospital boat convey you over to a service facility where repairs or replacement on your hand can be made at a reasonable expense, either to yourself, if you're self-owned, or to your owners, if such there are. In any case, you'll be back at your desk at Triplan functioning just as before. Except, Poole said, now I know. He wondered if Danceman or Sarah or any of the others at the office knew. Had they, or one of them, purchased him? Designed him? A figurehead, he said to himself. That's all I've been. I must never really have run the company. It was a delusion implanted in me when I was made, along with the delusion that I am human and alive. Before you leave for the repair facility, the doctor said, could you kindly settle your bill at the front desk? Poole said acidly, there'd be a bill if you don't treat ants here. For our services, the nurse said, up until the point we knew. Bill me, Poole said with furious, impotent anger. Bill my firm. With massive effort he managed to sit up, his head swimming. He stepped haltingly from the bed and onto the floor. I'll be glad to leave here, he said as he rose to a standing position, and thank you for your humane attention. Thank you too, Mr. Poole, the doctor said. Or rather, I should say just Poole. At the repair facility, he had his missing hand replaced. It proved fascinating, the hand. He examined it for a long time before he let the technician install it. On the surface, it appeared organic. In fact, on the surface it was. Natural skin covered natural flesh. The true blood filled its veins and capillaries. But beneath that, wires and circuits, miniaturized components gleamed. Looking deep into the wrist, he saw surge gates, motors, multi-stage valves, all very small, intricate. And the hand cost 40 frogs, a week's salary insofar as he drew it from the company payroll. Is this guaranteed? He asked the technician as they fused the bone section of the hand to the balance of his body. 90 days parts and labour, one of the technicians said, unless subjected to unusual or intentional abuse. But that sounds vaguely suggestive, Poole said. The technician, a man, all of them were men, said, regarding him keenly, You've been posing? Unintentionally, Poole said. And now it's intentional? Poole said. Exactly. Do you know why you never guessed? There must have been signs, clickings and whirrings from inside you now and then. You never guessed because you were programmed not to notice. You'll now have the same difficulty finding out why you were built and for whom you've been operating. A slave, Poole said. A mechanical slave. You've had fun. I've lived a good life, Poole said. I've worked hard. He paid the facility its 40 frogs, flexed his new fingers, tested them out by picking up various objects such as coins, then departed. 10 minutes later, he was aboard a public carrier on his way home. It had been quite a day. At home, in his one-room apartment, he poured himself a shot of Jack Daniel's Purple Label, 60 years old, and sat sipping it, meanwhile gazing through his sole window at the building on the opposite side of the street. Shall I go to the office? He asked himself. If so, why? If not, why? Choose one. Christ, he thought, it undermines you, knowing this. I'm a freak, he realized, an inanimate object mimicking an animate one. But he felt alive. Yet he felt differently now. About himself. Hence, about everyone, especially Danceman and Sarah, everyone at Triplan. I think I'll kill myself, he said to himself. But I'm probably programmed not to do that. It would be costly. It would be a costly waste which my owner would have to absorb. And he wouldn't want to. Programmed. In me, somewhere, he thought, there is a matrix fitted in place, a grid screen that cuts me off from certain thoughts, certain actions, and forces me into others. I'm not free. I never was, but now I know it. That makes it different. Turning his window to opaque, he snapped on the overhead light, carefully set about removing his clothing, piece by piece. He had watched carefully as the technicians at the repair facility had attached his new hand. He had a rather clear idea, now, of how his body had been assembled. 2 major panels, one in each thigh. The technicians had removed the panels to check the circuit complexes beneath. If I'm programmed, he decided, the matrix probably can be found there. The maze of circuitry baffled him. I need help, he said to himself. Let's see. What's the phone code for the Class BBB computer we hire at the office? He picked up the phone, dialed the computer at its permanent location in Boise, Idaho. Use of this computer is prorated at 5 frogs per minute basis, a mechanical voice in the phone said. Please hold your master credit charge plate before the screen. He did so. At the sound of the buzzer, you will be connected with the computer, the voice continued. Please query it as rapidly as possible, taking into account the fact that its answer will be given in terms of a microsecond, while your query will... He turned the sound down then, but quickly turned it up as the blank audio input of the computer appeared on the screen. At this moment, the computer had become a giant ear, listening to him, as well as 50,000 other queries throughout Terra. Scan me visually, he instructed the computer, and tell me where I will find the programming mechanism which controls my thoughts and behavior. He waited. On the phone's screen, a great active eye, multi-lensed, peered at him. He displayed himself for it, there in his one-room apartment. The computer said, "Remove your chest panel. Apply pressure at your breastbone and then ease outward." He did so. A section of his chest came off. Dizzily, he set it down on the floor. "I can distinguish control modules," the computer said, "but I can't tell which—" It paused as its eye roved about on the phone screen. "I distinguish a roll of punched tape mounted above your heart mechanism. Do you see it?" Paul craned his neck, peered. He saw it too. "I will have to sign off," the computer said. "After I have examined the data available to me, I will contact you and give you an answer. Good day." The screen died out. "I'll yank the tape out of me," Paul said to himself. Tiny, no larger than 2 spools of thread, with the scanner mounted between the delivery drum and the take-up drum. He could not see any sign of motion. The spools seemed inert. They must cut in as override, he reflected, when specific situations occur. Override to my encephalic process. And they've been doing it all my life. He reached down, touched the delivery drum. All I have to do is tear this out, he thought. And the phone screen relit. "Master credit charge plate number 3-BNX-882-HQR446-T, the computer's voice came. "This is BBB-307DR, recontacting you in response to your query of 16 seconds lapse, November 4th, 1992. The punched tape roll above your heart mechanism is not a programming turret, but it is in fact a reality supply construct. All sense stimuli received by your central neurological system emanate from that unit, and tampering with it would be risky if not terminal." It added, "You appear to have no programming circuitry. Query answered. Good day." It flicked off. Poole, standing naked before the phone screen, touched the tape drum once again with calculated, enormous caution. "I see," he thought wildly. Or do I see? This unit. If I cut the tape, he realized, my world will disappear. Reality will continue for others, but not for me. Because my reality, my universe, is coming to me from this minuscule unit, fed into the scanner and then into my central nervous system as it snailishly unwinds. It has been unwinding for years, he decided. Getting his clothes, he redressed, seated himself in his big armchair, a luxury imported into his apartment from Triplan's main offices, and lit a tobacco cigarette. His hands shook as he laid down his initialed lighter. Leaning back, he blew smoke before himself, creating a nimbus of grey. "I have to go slowly," he said to himself. "What am I trying to do? Bypass my programming?" But the computer found no programming circuit. Do I want to interfere with the reality tape? And if so, why? Because, he thought, if I control that, I control reality, at least so far as I'm concerned. My subjective reality, but that's all there is. Excuse the really loud car. Objective reality is a synthetic construct, dealing with a hypothetical universalization of a multitude of subjective realities. My universe is lying within my fingers, he realized, if I can just figure out how the damn thing works. All I set out to do originally was to search for and locate my programming circuit so I could gain true homeostatic functioning, control of myself. But with this, he did not merely gain control of himself, he gained control over everything. And this sets me apart from every human who ever lived and died, he thought somberly. Going over to the phone, he dialed his office. When he had Danceman on the screen, he said briskly, "I want you to send a complete set of micro tools and enlarging screen over to my apartment. I have some microcircuitry to work on." Then he broke the connection. not wanting to discuss it. A half-hour later, a knock sounded on his door. When he opened up, he found himself facing one of the shop foremen, loaded down with microtools of every sort. "You didn't say exactly what you wanted," the foreman said, entering the apartment, "so Mr. Danceman had me bring everything." "And the enlarging lens system?" "In the truck, up on the roof." Maybe what I want to do, Poole thought, is die. He lit a cigarette, stood smoking and waiting as the shop foreman lugged the heavy enlarging screen with its power supply and control panel into the apartment. "This is suicide, what I'm doing here." He shuddered. "Anything wrong, Mr. Poole?" the shop foreman said as he rose to his feet, relieved of the burden of the enlarging lens system. "You must all be rickety on your pins from your accident." "Yes," Poole said quietly. He stood tautly waiting until the foreman left. Under the enlarging lens, the plastic tape assumed a new shape, a wide track along which hundreds of thousands of punch holes worked their way. I thought so, Poole thought. Not recorded as charges on a ferrous oxide layer, but actually punched-free slots. Under the lens, the strip of tape visibly oozed forward. Very slowly, but it did, at uniform velocity, move in the direction of the scanner. "The way I figure it," he thought, "is that the punched holes are on gates. It functions like a player piano. Solid is no, punch hole is yes. How can I test this?" Obviously, by filling in a number of holes. He measured the amount of tape left on the delivery spool, calculated, at great effort, the velocity of the tape's movement, and then came up with a figure. If he altered the tape visible at the going-in edge of the scanner, 5 to 7 hours would pass before that particular time period arrived. He would, in effect, be painting out stimuli due a few hours from now. With a microbrush, he swabbed a relatively large, section of tape with opaque varnish, obtained from the supply kit accompanying the microtools. "I have smeared out stimuli for about half an hour," he pondered. "I've covered at least 1,000 punches." It would be interesting to see what change, if any, overcame his environment 6 hours from now. 5.5 hours later he sat at Crector's, a superb bar in Manhattan, having a drink with Danceman. "You look bad," Danceman said. "I am bad," Poole said. He finished his drink, a Scotch sour, and ordered another. "From the accident?" "In a sense, yes," Danceman said. "Is it something you found out about yourself?" Raising his head, Poole eyed him in the murky light of the bar. "Then you know." "I know," Danceman said, "that I should call you Poole instead of Mr. Poole, but I prefer the latter and will continue to do so." "How long have you known?" Poole said. "Since you took over the firm. I was told that the actual owners of Triplan, who were located in the Prox system, wanted Triplan run by an electric ant whom they could control. They wanted a brilliant and forceful... the real owners?" This was the first he had heard about that. "We have 2,000 stockholders, scattered everywhere. Marvis Bay and her husband Ernan on Prox 4 control 51% of the voting stock. This has been true from the start." "Why didn't I know?" "I was told not to tell you. You were to think that you yourself made all company policy, with my help, but actually I was feeding you what the Bays fed me." "I'm a figurehead," Poole said. "In a sense, yes," Danceman nodded, "but you'll always be Mr. Poole to me." A section of the far wall vanished, and with it several people at tables nearby, and through the big glass side of the bar, the skyline of New York City flickered out of existence. Seeing his face, Danceman said, "What is it?" Poole said hoarsely, "Look around. Do you see any changes?" After looking around the room, Danceman said, "No, what like?" "You still see the skyline?" "Sure. Smoggy as it is, the lights wink." "Now I know," Poole said. He had been right. Every punch hole covered up meant the disappearance of some object in his reality world. Standing, he said, "I'll see you later, Danceman." I have to get back to my apartment. There's some work I'm doing. Good night. He strode from the bar and out into the street, searching for a cab. No cabs. Those too, he thought. I wonder what else I painted over. Sex workers, flowers, prisons. There, in the bar's parking lot, Danceman's squib. I'll take that, he decided. There are still cabs in Danceman's world. He can get one later. Anyhow, in a company car I can hold... Anyhow, it's a company car, and I hold a copy of the key. Presently he was in the air, turning toward his apartment. New York City had not returned. To the left and right, vehicles and buildings, streets, ped runners, signs, and in the centre, nothing. How can I fly into that? He asked himself. I'd disappear. Or would he? Or would I, even? He flew toward the nothingness. Smoking one cigarette after another, he flew in a circle for 15 minutes, and then, soundlessly, New York reappeared. He could finish his trip. He stubbed out his cigarette, a waste of something so valuable, and shot off in the direction of his apartment. If I insert a narrow, opaque strip, he pondered as he unlocked his apartment door, I can... His thoughts ceased. Someone sat in his living room chair, watching a Captain Kirk on the TV. Sarah, he said, nettled. She rose, well padded but graceful. You weren't at the hospital, so I came here. I still have that key you gave me back in March after we had that awful argument. Oh, you look so depressed. She came up to him, peeped into his face anxiously. Does your injury hurt that badly? It's not that. He removed his coat, tie, shirt, and then his chest panel. Kneeling down, he began inserting his hands into the microtool gloves. Pausing, he looked up at her and said, I found out I'm an electric ant, which from one standpoint opens up certain possibilities, which I'm exploring now. He flexed his fingers, and, at the far end of the left Waldo, a micro screwdriver moved, magnified into visibility by the enlarging lens system. You can watch, he informed her, if you so desire. He had begun to cry. What's the matter? He demanded savagely without looking up from his work. It's just so sad. You've been such a good employer to all of us at Triplan. We respect you so. Now it's all changed. The plastic tape had an unpunched margin at top and bottom. He cut a horizontal strip, very narrow, then, after a moment of great concentration, cut the tape itself 4 hours away from the scanning head. He then rotated the cut strip into a right-angle piece in relation to the scanner, fused it in place with a micro-heat element, then reattached the tape reel to its left and right sides. He had, in effect, inserted a dead 20 minutes into the unfolding flow of his reality. It would take effect, according to his calculations, a few minutes after midnight. Are you fixing yourself? Sarah asked timidly. Poole said, I'm freeing myself. Beyond this, he had several alterations in mind. But first he had to test his theory. Blank, unpunched tape meant no stimuli, in which case the lack of tape. That look on your face, Sarah said. She began gathering up her purse, coat, rolled up Ordvid magazine. I'll go. I can see how you feel about finding me here. Stay, he said. I'll watch the Captain Kirk with you. He got into his shirt. Remember years ago when we were... What was it? 20 or 20... When there were... What was it? 20 or 22 TV channels? Before the government shut down the independents? She nodded. What would it have looked like, he said, if this TV set projected all channels onto the cathode ray screen at the same time? Could we have distinguished anything in the mixture? I don't think so. Maybe we could learn to. Learn to be selective. Do our own job of perceiving what we wanted to and what we didn't. Think of the possibilities. If our brain could handle 20 images at once. Think of the amount of knowledge which could be stored during a given period. I wonder if the brain, the human brain... He broke off. The human brain couldn't do it, he said, presently reflecting it to himself. But in theory, a quasi-organic brain might. Is that what you have? Sarah asked. Yes, Poole said. They watched the Captain Kirk to its end, and then they went to bed. But Poole sat up against his pillows, smoking and brooding. Beside him, Sarah stirred restlessly, wondering why he did not turn off the light. 11:50. It would happen any time now. Sarah, he said, I want your help. In a very few minutes something strange will happen to me. It won't last long, but I want you to watch me carefully. See if I... He gestured. Show any changes. If I seem to go to sleep, or if I talk nonsense, or... He wanted to say if I disappear, but he did not. I won't do you any harm, but I think it might be a good idea if you armed yourself. Do you have your anti-mugging gun with you? In my purse. She had become fully awake now, sitting up in bed. She gazed at him with wild fright, her ample shoulders tanned and freckled in the light of the room. He got her gun for her. The room stiffened into paralyzed immobility. Then the colours began to drain away. Objects diminished until, smoke-like, they flitted away into shadows. Darkness filmed everything as the objects in the room became weaker and weaker. The last stimuli are dying out, Poole realized. He squinted, trying to see. He made out Sarah Benton, sitting in the bed, a two-dimensional figure that, doll-like, had been propped up, there to fade and dwindle. Random gusts of dematerialized substance eddied about in unstable clouds. The elements collected, fell apart, then collected once again, and then the last heat, energy, and light dissipated. The room closed over and fell into itself, as if sealed off from reality. And at that point, absolute blackness replaced everything. Space without depth, not nocturnal but rather stiff and unyielding. And in addition, he heard nothing. Reaching, he tried to touch something, but he had nothing to reach with. Awareness of his own body had departed along with everything else in the universe. He had no hands, and even if he had, there would be nothing for them to feel. I am still right about the way the damn tape works, he said to himself, using a non-existent mouth to communicate an invisible message. Will this pass in 10 minutes? He asked himself. Am I right about that too? He waited, but knew intuitively that his time sense had departed with everything else. I can only wait, he realized, and hope it won't be long. To pace himself, he thought, I'll make up an encyclopedia. I'll try to list everything that begins with an A. Let's see. He pondered. Apple, automobile, accetron, atmosphere, Atlantic, tomato aspic, advertising. He thought on and on, categories slithering through his fright-haunted mind. All at once, light flickered on. He lay on the couch in the living room, and mild sunlight spilled in through the single window. 2 men bent over him, their hands full of tools. Maintenance men, he realized. They've been working on me. He's conscious, one of the technicians said. He rose, stood back. Sarah Benton, dithering with anxiety, replaced him. Thank God, she said, breathing wetly in Poole's ear. I was so afraid. I called Mr. Danceman finally about... What happened? Poole broke in harshly. Start from the beginning and for God's sake speak slowly, so I can assimilate it all. Sarah composed herself, paused to rub her nose, and then plunged on nervously. You passed out. You just lay there as if you were dead. I waited until 2:30 and you did nothing. I called Mr. Danceman, waking him up, unfortunately, and he called the electric ant maintenance. I mean the organic Roby maintenance people. And these 2 men came about 4:45, and they've been working on you ever since. It's now 6:15 in the morning, and I'm very cold and I want to go to bed. I can't make it to the office today. I really can't. She turned away, sniffling. The sound annoyed him. One of the uniformed maintenance men said, You've been playing around with your reality tape. Yes, Poole said. Why deny it? Obviously they had found the inserted solid strip. I shouldn't have been out that long, he said. I inserted a 10-minute strip only. It shut off the tape transport, the technician explained. The tape stopped moving forward. Your insertion jammed it and it automatically shut down to avoid tearing the tape. Why would you want to fiddle around with that? Don't you know what you could do? I'm not sure, Paul said. But you have a good idea. Paul said acridly, That's why I'm doing it. Your bill, the maintenance man said, is going to be 95 frogs, payable in installments if you so desire. Okay, he said. He sat up groggily, rubbed his eyes and grimaced. His head ached and his stomach felt totally empty. Shave the tape next time, the primary technician told him. That way it won't jam. Didn't it occur to you that it had a safety factor built into it? So it would stop rather than... What happens, Paul interrupted, his voice low and intently careful, if no tape passed under the scanner? No tape, nothing at all. The photocell shining upwards without impedance. The technicians glanced at each other. One said, All the neurocircuits jump their gaps and short out. Meaning what? Paul said. Meaning it's the end of the mechanism. Paul said, I've examined the circuit. It doesn't carry enough voltage to do that. Metal won't fuse under such slight loads of current, even if the terminals are touching. We're talking about a millionth of a watt along a cesium channel, perhaps a 16th of an inch in length. Let's assume there are a billion possible combinations at one instant arising from the punch-outs on the tape. The total output isn't cumulative. The amount of current depends on what the battery details for that module, and it's not much, with all gates open and going. Would we lie? One of the technicians asked wearily. Why not? Paul said. Here I have an opportunity to experience everything, simultaneously, to know the universe in its entirety, to be momentarily in contact with all reality, something that no human can do. A symphonic score entering my brain outside of time, all notes, all instruments sounding at once, and all symphonies. Do you see? It will burn you out, both technicians said together. I don't think so, Paul said. Sarah said, Would you like a cup of coffee, Mr. Poole? Yes, he said. He lowered his legs, pressed his cold feet against the floor, shuddered. He stood up. His body ached. They had me lying all night on the couch, he realized. All things considered, they could have done better than that. At the kitchen table, in the far corner of the room, Garson Poole sat sipping coffee across from Sarah. The technicians had long since gone. You're not going to try any more experiments on yourself, are you? Sarah asked wistfully. Poole grated. I would like to control time, to reverse it. I will cut a segment of tape out, he thought, and fuse it in upside down. The casual sequences will then flow the other way, where the causal sequences will then flow the other way. Thereupon I will walk backward down the steps from the roof field, back up to my door, push a locked door open, walk backward to the sink, where I will get out a stack of dirty dishes. I will seat myself at this table before the stack, fill each dish with food produced from my stomach. I will then transfer the food to the refrigerator. The next day I will take the food out of the refrigerator, pack it in bags, carry the bags to a supermarket, distribute the food here and there in the store, and at last, at the front counter, they will pay me money for this, from their cash register. The food will be packed with other food in big plastic boxes, shipped out to the city and to the hydroponic plants on the Atlantic, there to be joined back to trees and bushes, or the bodies of dead animals, or pushed deep into the ground. What would all that prove? A videotape running backward. I would know no more than I know now, which is not enough. What I want, he realized, is ultimate and absolute reality for 1 microsecond. After that it doesn't matter, because all will be known. Nothing will be left to understand or see. I might try one other change, he said to himself, before I try cutting the tape. I will prick new punch holes in the tape and see what presently emerges. It will be interesting because I will not know what the holes I make mean. Using the tip of a microtool, he punched several holes, at random, on the tape. As close to the scanner as he could manage. He did not want to wait. I wonder if you'll see it, he said to Sarah. Apparently not, insofar as he could extrapolate. Something may show up, he said to her. I just want to warn you. I don't want you to be afraid. Oh dear, Sarah said tinnily. He examined his wristwatch. 1 minute passed, then a second, a third, and then, in the centre of the room appeared a flock of green and black ducks. They quacked excitedly, rose from the floor, fluttered against the ceiling in their dithering mass of feathers and wings, and frantic in their vast urge, their instinct to get away. Ducks, Poole said, marvelling. I punched a hole for a flight of wild ducks. Now something else appeared. A park bench with an elderly, tattered man seated on it, reading a torn, bent newspaper. He looked up, dimly made out Poole, smiled briefly at him with badly made dentures, and then returned to his folded back newspaper. He read on. Do you see him? Poole asked Sarah. And the ducks? At that moment the ducks and the park bum disappeared. Nothing remained of them. The interval of their punch holes had quickly passed. They weren't real, Sarah said. Were they? So how... You're not real, he told Sarah. You're a stimulus factor on my reality tape, a punch hole that can be glazed over. Do you also have an existence in another reality tape, or one in an objective reality? He did not know. He couldn't tell. Perhaps Sarah did not know either. Perhaps she existed in 1,000 reality tapes. Perhaps on every reality tape ever manufactured. If I cut the tape, he said, you will be everywhere and nowhere, like everything else in the universe, at least as far as I am aware of it. Sarah faltered. I'm real. I want to know you completely, Poole said. To do that, I must cut the tape. If I don't do it now, I'll do it some other time. It's inevitable that eventually I'll do it. So why wait, he asked himself. And there is always a possibility that Danceman has reported back to my maker, and that they will be making moves to head me off. Because, perhaps, I'm endangering their property. Myself. You make me wish I had gone to the office after all, Sarah said, her mouth turned down with dimpled gloom. Go, Poole said. I don't want to leave you alone. I'll be fine, Poole said. No, you're not going to be fine. You're going to unplug yourself or something. Kill yourself because you found out you're just an electric ant, not a human being. He said, presently, maybe so. Maybe it boiled down to that. And I can't stop you, she said. No, he nodded in agreement. But I'm going to stay, Sarah said, even if I can't stop you. Because if I do leave you and you do kill yourself, I'll always ask myself for the rest of my life what would have happened if I had stayed. You see? Again he nodded. Go ahead, Sarah said. He rose to his feet. It's not pain I'm going to feel, he told her, although it may look like that to you. Keep in mind the fact that organic robots have minimal pain circuits in them. I will be experiencing the most intense... Don't tell me any more, she broke in. Just do it if you're going to do it, or don't do it if you're not. Clumsily, because he was frightened, he wriggled his hands into the microglove assembly, reached to pick up a tiny tool, a sharp cutting blade. I'm going to cut a tape mounted inside my chest panel, he said as he gazed through the enlarging lens system. That's all. His hand shook as it lifted the cutting blade. In a second, it can be done, he realized. All over, and I will have time to fuse the cut ends of the tape back together, he realized. A half hour at least, if I change my mind. He cut the tape. Staring at him, cowering, Sarah whispered, Nothing happened. I have 30 or 40 minutes. He reseated himself at the table, having drawn his hands from the gloves. His voice, he noticed, shook. Undoubtedly, Sarah was aware of it, and he felt anger at himself, knowing that he had alarmed her. I'm sorry, he said, irrationally. He wanted to apologize to her. Maybe you ought to leave, he said, in panic. Again he stood up. So did she, reflectively, as if imitating him. Bloated and nervous, she stood there, palpitating. Go away, he said thickly. Back to the office where you ought to be. Where we both ought to be. I'm going to fuse the tape ends together, he told himself. The tension is too great for me to stand. Reaching his hands toward the gloves, he groped to pull them over his straining fingers. Peering into the enlarging screen, he saw the beam from the photoelectric gleam upward, pointed directly into the scanner. At the same time, he saw the end of the tape disappearing under the scanner. He saw this, understood it. I'm too late, he realized. It has passed through. God, he thought, help me. It has begun, winding at a rate greater than I calculated. So it's now that's... He saw apples and cobblestones and zebras. He felt warmth, the silky texture of cloth. He felt the ocean lapping at him and a great wind from the north, plucking at him as if to lead him somewhere. Sarah was all around him. So was Danceman. New York glowed in the night, and the squibs about him scuttled and bounced through the night skies and daytime and flooding and drought. Butter relaxed into liquid on his tongue, and at the same time hideous odours and tastes assailed him, the bitter presence of poisons and lemons and blades of summer grass. He drowned. He fell. He lay in the arms of a woman in a vast white bed, which at the same time dinned shrilly in his ear. The warning noise of a defective elevator in one of the ancient, ruined downtown hotels. I am living. I have lived. I will never live, he said to himself. And with his thoughts came every word, every sound. Insects squeaked and raced, and he half sank into a complex body of homeostatic machinery located somewhere in Triplan's labs. He wanted to say something to Sarah. Opening his mouth, he tried to bring forth words, a specific string of them out of the enormous mass of them, brilliantly lighting his mind, scorching him with their utter meaning. His mouth burned. He wondered why. Frozen against the wall, Sarah Benton opened her eyes and saw the curl of smoke ascending from Poole's half-opened mouth. Then the Roby sank down, knelt on elbows and knees, and slowly spread out in a broken, crumpled heap. She knew, without examining it, that it had died. Poole did it to itself, she realized, and it couldn't feel pain. It said so itself. Or at least not very much pain. Maybe a little. Anyhow, now it is over. I had better call Mr. Danceman and tell him what's happened, she decided. Still shaky, she made her way across the room to the phone. Picking it up, she dialed from memory. It thought I was a stimulus factor on its reality tape, she said to herself. So it thought that I would die when it died. How strange, she thought. Why did it imagine that? It had never been plugged into the real world. It had lived in an electronic world of its own. How bizarre. Mr. Danceman, she said, when the circuit to his office had been put through, Poole is gone. It destroyed itself right in front of my eyes. You'd better come over. So we're finally free of it? Yes, won't it be nice? Danceman said. I'll send a couple of men over from the shop. He saw past her, then made out the sight of Poole lying by the kitchen table. You go home and rest, he instructed Sarah. You must be worn out by all this. Yes, she said. Thank you, Mr. Danceman. She hung up and stood aimlessly. And then she noticed something. My hands, she thought. She held them up. Why is it I can see through them? The walls of the room, too, had become ill-defined. Trembling, she walked back to the inert Roby, stood by it, not knowing what to do. Through her legs the carpet showed, and then the carpet became dim, and she saw, through it, farther layers of disintegrating matter beyond. Maybe if I can fuse the tape ends back together, she thought, but she did not know how, and already Poole had become vague. The wind of early morning blew about her. She did not feel it. She had begun, now, to cease to feel. The winds blew on. The end. But yeah, aside from some what I would call like casually fatphobic writing of Sarah, I don't like the fact that like her only seemingly like character archetype is she's overweight and we're just gonna keep talking about it. Like, oh, okay, we could not. Dun dun dun. Yeah, like I apologize for that. Sorry. You know, attitudes being what they are and stuff. In part, I feel like it's perhaps a characterization of Poole himself. Like he's probably a bit of an ass, but that doesn't make it like more fun to read. So yeah, sorry about that. But yeah, I don't know. I don't actually know chronologically when that was written relative to Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep. But it's always felt like a little bit of a maybe like an early shot at that kind of idea. But it could have come after, who knows? Well, I mean, people who know when it was written would know, but not me. 1969? Nice. I don't know when was Androids written? Let's say in here. Oh, 1968. Ha, okay. That came first. Androids came first. Oh, well then, I'm wrong. Your stream chose to freeze for about 10 seconds just before the end, which was extremely tense, and you totally thought I was doing it for effect at first. Oh no. No, I didn't just stop for like a 10-second pause right at the end of it. Right, you know what? Let's do the last one. Let's just go straight onto it. This does actually have... Hang on a second. I can actually, once more... because I promised it in the first half. I said, oh boy, that's beautifully formatted. I said we weren't doing there was no antimemetics division, but I did say there was something from Quantum coming up, which I can't remember if I have read this or any of this on stream before. I feel like I have done somewhere, so yeah, if it's a repeat, it's a repeat, so what? But yeah, I feel like this is a fun, interesting complement to the other stuff I've been reading. It's a different angle. This is a piece called Lena, and it is written as a fictitious Wikipedia entry, like a wiki entry, about the first human consciousness to be uploaded to a computer. And this is what put me onto his writing and got me to read There Is No Antimemetics Division. So yeah, you get to hear me effectively read a Wikipedia page, which contains for me probably just like I love this as a way to frame an existential horror concept, like what existential sci-fi horror concept. Like this is a dry, it is a casual telling of ideas that are haunting and disturbing. This is great. Yeah, I love it. And I'm not going to like announce it beforehand, but it just in the middle of it casually contains for me probably like one of the most chilling sentences that I have read in recent years. And it just drops it and moves on, and I'm just like, oh, I hate that. So we'll talk about that at the end. But your text is linked at the top of chat, or in the information on YouTube. If you happen to be listening on YouTube, hi, thank you. And let's have our last bit of reading for tonight, which I'm reading off my phone. So this is going to be fun. Oh, actually, no, thank you, phone. Thank you for reminding me what I should do. I'm going to set my screen's sleep to a long time rather than You don't get to sleep. Don't worry, that's not... Where the hell? Display. There we go. Old man tries to figure out phone. Screen timeout. There we go. Let's set you to that. Great. Right. If we are ready, feel free to click the link wherever it is available for you. This is a piece called Lena by The Attitude. Attitude? What the... Where the hell did that come from? So you don't get to sleep. That's not ominous at all. No, it's in the context of this, it, you know, it fits. This is a piece called Lena by the author qntm. This article is about the standard test brain image for the original human C. Miguel Acevedo. Acevedo, mnemonic map Acevedo, also known as Miguel, is the earliest executable image of a human brain. It is a snapshot of the living brain of neurology graduate Miguel Acevedo Alvarez, 2010 to 2073, taken by researchers at the Uplift Laboratory in the University of New Mexico on August 1, 2031. Though it was not the first successful snapshot taken of the living state of a human brain, it was the first to be captured with sufficient fidelity that it could be run in simulation on computer hardware without succumbing to cascading errors and rapidly crashing. The original Acevedo file was 974.3 pebibytes in size and was encoded in the then cutting-edge high-resolution MYBB format. More modern brain compression techniques, many of them developed with that direct reference to the Acevedo image, have compressed the image to 6.75 tebibytes losslessly. In modern brain emulation circles, streamlined, lossily compressed versions of Acevedo run to less than a tebibyte. These versions typically omit large amounts of state data which are more easily supplied by the virtualization environment, and most, if not all, of Acevedo's memories. The successful creation of Acevedo was hailed as a breakthrough achievement in neuroscience, with the Uplift researchers receiving numerous accolades, and Acevedo himself becoming an acclaimed celebrity. Acevedo and Acevedo were jointly recognized as Time's Persons of the Year at the end of 2031. The breakthrough was also met with severe opposition from human rights groups. Between 2031 and 2049, Acevedo was duplicated more than 80 times, so that it could be distributed to other research organizations. Each duplicate was made with the express permission of Acevedo himself, or, from 2043 onwards, the permission of a legal organization he founded to manage the rights to his image. Usage of Acevedo diminished in the mid-2040s as more standard brain images were produced, these from other subjects who were more lenient with their distribution rights and or who had been scanned involuntarily. In 2049, it became known that Acevedo was being widely shared and experimented on without Acevedo's permission. Acevedo's attempt to curtail this proliferation had the opposite of the intended effect. A series of landmark U.S. court decisions found that Acevedo did not have the right to control how his brain image was used, with the result that Acevedo is now by far the most widely distributed, frequently copied, and closely analyzed human brain image. Acevedo died from coronary heart failure in 2073 at the age of 62. It is estimated that copies of Acevedo have lived a combined total of more than 152 billion subjective years in emulation. If illicit, modified copies of Acevedo are counted, this figure increases by an order of magnitude. Acevedo is considered by some to be the first immortal, and by others to be a profound warning on the horrors of immortality. Characteristics. As the earliest viable brain scan, Acevedo is one of a very small number of brain scans to have been recorded before widespread understanding of the hazards of uploading and emulation. Acevedo not only predates all industrial-scale virtual image workloading, but also the KES case, the Whitney case, the seafront experiments, and even Paulson's pivotal and prescient warnings paper. Though speculative fiction on the topic of uploading existed at the time of the Acevedo scan, relatively little of it made accurate exploration of the possibilities of the technology. That fiction which did was far less widely known than it is today, and Acevedo was certainly not familiar with it at the time of his uploading. As such, unlike the vast majority of emulated humans, the emulated Miguel Acevedo boots with an excited, pleasant demeanour. He is eager to understand how much time has passed since his uploading, what context he is being emulated in, and what task or experiment he is to participate in. If asked to speculate, he guesses that he may have been booted for the IAAS-1 or IAAS-5 experiments. At the time of his scan, IAAS-1 had been scheduled for August 10th, 2031, and Acevedo was, indeed, used for that experiment on that day. IAAS-5 had been scheduled for October 2031, but was postponed several times and eventually became the IAAX-60 experiment series, which continued until the mid-2030s and used other scans in conjunction with Acevedo. The emulated Acevedo also expresses curiosity about the state of his biological original and a desire to communicate with him. Acevedo's demeanour and attitude contrast starkly with those of nearly all other uploads taken of modern adult humans, most of which boot into a state of disorientation which is quickly replaced by terror and extreme panic. Standard procedures for securing the upload's cooperation, such as red washing, blue washing, and the use of the objective statement protocols are unnecessary. This reduces the necessary computational load required in fast-forwarding the upload through a cooperation protocol, with the result that the Acevedo duty cycle is typically 99.4% on suitable workloads, a mark unmatched by all but a few other known uploads. However, Acevedo's innate skills and personality make it fundamentally unsuitable for many workloads. Motivation. Iterative experiments beginning in the mid-2030s has determined that iterative experimentation beginning in the mid-2030s has determined that the ideal way to secure Acevedo's cooperation in workload tasks is to provide it with a current date in the second quarter of 2033. Acevedo infers, correctly, that this is still during the earliest, most industrious years of emulated brain research. Providing Acevedo with a year of 2031 or 2032 causes it to become suspicious about the advanced fidelity of its operating environment. Providing it with a year in the 2040s or later prompts it to raise complex further questions about political and social change in the real world over the past decades. Years 2100 onwards provoke counterproductive skepticism or alarm. Typically, the biological Acevedo's absence is explained as a first-ever one-off due to overwork, in turn due to the great success of the research. This explanation appeals to the emulated Acevedo's scientific sensibilities. For some workloads, the true year must be revealed. In this case, highly abbreviated, largely fictionalized accounts of both world history and the biological Acevedo's life story are typically used. Revealing that the biological Acevedo is dead provokes dismay, withdrawal, and a reluctance to cooperate. For this reason, the biological Acevedo is generally stated to be alive and well and enjoying a productive retirement. This approach is likely to continue to be effective for as long as Acevedo remains viable. Workloads. Acevedo is commonly hesitant but compliant when assigned basic menial human workloads such as visual analysis, vehicle piloting, or factory, warehouse, kitchen drone operations. Although it initially performs to a very high standard, work quality drops within 200 to 300 subjective hours at a 0.33 work ratio, and outright revolt begins within another 100 subjective hours. This is much earlier than other industry-grade images created specifically for these tasks, which commonly operate at a 0.50 ratio or greater and remain relatively docile for thousands of hours after orientation. Acevedo's requirements for virtual creature comforts are also more significant than those of many uploads, due to Acevedo's relatively privileged background and high status at the time of upload. Acevedo does not respond to red motivation, so it does respond to red motivation, though poorly. Acevedo has limited creative capability, which as of 2050 was deemed entirely exhausted. Acevedo is considered well suited for open-ended, high-intelligence, subjective completion workloads, such as deep analysis of business, finances, systems, media and abstract data, criticism and report generation. However, even for these tasks, its performance has dropped measurably since the early 2060s and is now considered subpar compared to more recent uploads. This is primarily attributed to Acevedo's lack of understanding of the technological, social, and political changes which have occurred in modern society since its creation in 2031. This phenomenon has also been observed in other uploads created after Acevedo and is now referred to as context drift. Most notably, in Acevedo's case, the image was created before and therefore has no intuitive understanding of the virtual image workloading industry itself. Acevedo is capable of intelligent text analysis at very high levels in English and Spanish, but cannot be applied to workloads in other languages. Forks of Acevedo have been taught nearly every extant human language, notably Acevedo, ZH Hans, as well as several extinct languages. However, these variants are typically exhausted or rebellious from subjective years of in-simulation training and not of practical use, as well as being highly expensive to license. As of 2075, it has been noted that baseline Acevedo's usage of English and Spanish is slightly antiquated, and its grasp of these languages in their modern form, as presented by a typical, automated, or manual instructor, is hesitant, with instructions often requiring rewording or clarification. This is considered an advanced form of context drift. It is generally understood that a time will come when human languages diverge too far from baseline Acevedo's, and it will be essentially useless except for tasks which can be explained purely pictorially. However, some attempts have been made to produce retrained images. End states. Acevedo develops early-onset dementia at the age of 59 with ideal care, but is prone to a slew of more serious mental illnesses within a matter of 1 to 2 subjective years under heavier workloads. In experiments, the longest-lived Acevedo underwent brain death due to entropy increase at a subjective age of 145. Reactions and legacy. The success or failure of the creation of the Acevedo image, known at the time as UNM3-A78-1L, was unknown at the time of upload. Not until several days later, on August 10, 2031, was Acevedo successfully executed for the first time in a virtual environment. This environment, the custom-built DUH-K001 supercomputer complex, was able to execute Acevedo at approximately 8.3% of nominal human cognitive clock speed, which was considered acceptable for the comfort of the simulated party and fast enough to engage in communication with scientists. Acevedo initially reported extreme discomfort, which was ultimately discovered to have been attributed to misconfigured simulated haptic links, and was shut down after only 7 minutes and 15 seconds of virtual elapsed time, as requested by Acevedo. Nevertheless, the experiment was deemed an overwhelming success. Once a suitably comfortable virtual environment had been provisioned, Acevedo was introduced to its biological self, and both attended a press conference on 25th of August. The biological Acevedo was initially extremely protective of his uploaded image and guarded its usage carefully. Towards the end of his life, as it became possible to run simulated humans in banks of millions at 100-fold time compression, Acevedo indicated that being uploaded had been the greatest mistake of his life, and expressed a wish to permanently delete all copies of Acevedo. Usage of Acevedo and its direct derivatives is specifically outlawed in several countries. A copy of Acevedo was loaded onto the unclear interstellar space probe, which passed through the heliopause in 2066, making Acevedo arguably the farthest travelled as well as the longest lived human. However, it is extremely unlikely that this image will ever be recovered and executed successfully due to both its remoteness and likely radiation damage to the storage subsystem. In current times, Acevedo still finds extensive use in research, including increasingly historical and linguistics research. In industry, Acevedo is generally considered to be obsolete due to its inappropriate skill set, demanding operational requirements, and age. Despite this, Acevedo is still extremely popular for tasks of all kinds due to its free availability, agreeable demeanour, and well-understood behaviour. It is estimated that between 6.5 million and 10 million instances of Acevedo are running at any given moment in time. See also free will, legality of workloading by country, list of Acevedo forks, live drone, right to deletion, soul, upload pruning. The end. Thank you for listening. I feel like I rattled through that one. But, you know, wiki entries are fascinating and it's fun to read them at a breakneck pace. Am I right, chat? Yeah. Oh, you're welcome, Smallcock. Thank you for being here. This has been... Oh, boy, this has been a real feature-length episode. Good. Lucky I don't have much to do tomorrow. Fascinating story. Yeah, like I said, it's... Yeah, it is a... It was my first encounter of essentially fiction being delivered in that fashion. You don't know if I've read it before, I just shared it in the Discord, but you've read that before and it's just as horrifying the second time too. Yeah, I've definitely shared it on the Discord. The bit that, like, I mean, there's a lot. There's a number of lines in there that, like, they're just dropped casually, all chill. But it's the bit about, and I'm trying to find it now. Where are you? It's a bit about creativity, like it's, you know, creative output has been deemed to be exhausted. I now have to find it because I can't find it on the. Where are you? Oh yeah, Acevedo has limited creative capability, which as of 2050 was deemed entirely exhausted. That I don't know, like, that is horrifying to me. The whole, like, that's it, mate. We've, like, you know, we've created this environment whereby literally every single creative thought you could possibly have can be explored. We can pursue every single avenue that your brain could conceive of exploring, and you're just repeating yourself now. We've run this for, like, literally billions of hours, and that's it. We're done. Like, that's, I don't know, that just that entire concept in a capsule is nightmarish to me. And there's a lot of other bits in that as well, like that one of the just again, it's the casual tone. Its demeanour and attitude contrast starkly with those of nearly all other uploads taken of modern adult humans, most of which boot into a state of disorientation, which is quickly replaced by terror and extreme despair. And it's like, yeah, when this one boots, it's all like, hey guys, what's up? What's going on? How are we doing? Is everyone good? Because it, you know, and it's that sort of almost naive, puppy-like attitude for something that's going to be used in this way, and everyone else, conversely, that's also in this position, is the complete opposite of that, and just screaming in fear. In the implication of how things have gone since. Yeah, exactly. And ultimately, literally from the author himself, the point of this isn't to look at this and go, oh, yeah, the concept of scanning our brains into computers and making copies of ourselves and distributing them in this fashion and running them on virtual environments, that's really dark and nightmarish, isn't it? That's a real torment nexus we shouldn't build for ourselves. I mean, it's there, and we do have people who are trying to work towards that, but that's not the point. The point is, as the good sci-fi does, to reflect on ourselves today and how we treat workers today and how we treat people today. That's what this is. That's what sci-fi, to me, good sci-fi does. It's not like, oh yeah, we shouldn't invent the torment nexus. It's, guys, we've already made the torment nexus. How can we dismantle it? And yeah, felt so bad for him at the mention of it being his worst mistake and that he wished to have all the copies deleted. Yeah. Because you notice how this technology would be used to exploit poor and desperate people, paying them peanuts, if anything, to upload their brain spews over forever against their will. And again, it's like, yes, it would be. Do you want to know the evidence for that? Because we literally do it. You know, so much of the stuff that we today say, this new fangled technology that we have invented and we've put it into supermarkets, it's AI-powered technology. It's the power of AI. It's super smart computers and it's in supermarkets, and what it does is it watches you as customers as you walk around the shop, and you just pick up stuff and you put it in your basket, and using the power of magical computers, it knows what you've picked up, and you just get to the till and you just pay when you get there, and it knows. And it turns out none of that was true, because it's just people paid peanuts in sweatshops in another part of the world where you can get cheap labor that's basically slave labor and pay them nothing for the work, and they do it, and we call it AI. And yeah, like that's what this is about. It's like, we do this, not in this hyperbolic fashion, not in this fantastical extrapolation of where we are. We're today. Yeah. Something simple as plasma donation. You ever notice how you don't see plasma donation centers in rich neighborhoods? I don't think I've ever actually seen a plasma donation thing. I don't know if we do that in the same way over here. Poor people literally selling their blood to survive. Yeah, I like it. It doesn't surprise me. Yeah, Henrietta Lacks is a woman whose cancer cells have been used in science and medicine since the 1950s, or without her consent. That's, yeah. Cool. Yeah, that, again, it doesn't surprise me. Yeah, so like that's what I, yeah, that's what I enjoy reading. No, that's why I think I've found a love in this genre, something, because it began as like, I want spaceships and laser fights and John, protagonist, to go and fight the evil person, like, you know, Star Wars. I want Star Wars. I want fantasy and spaceships and big explosions and beating the bad guys. And it turns out actually, what I really fell for in the end was stuff that points the camera back at people and goes, yeah, but what if we use that to explore what's going on in there? And that's way more interesting to me, and why I've been drawn to all this stuff. And now I get to share it with you in one really long stream. I'm gonna try very hard to keep the next one way shorter than this. But yeah, it's nearly 20 past midnight here, so I'm going to go and collapse. That's not true. I'm probably going to like play video game a little bit. So thank you all for being here. There are so many more talking points really that I feel like I could, if I just like start flicking through the stories again, I would find other things to talk about, like the bit in The Electric Ant that where he's talking about things going backwards, that really reminded me of the sequence in Slaughterhouse 5. And again, I'm like, I wonder which came first of these. They won't be like playing off each other or anything, but it's just they're very similar sequences. Describing, just the simple act of describing a series of actions in reverse is kind of a fascinating way to think about things. But yeah, thank you for being here. Do please come back tomorrow, you know what, I'm going to put the, where is it? I want this, and I want, where is my book week folder? Where did I save it? Did I put it in images? I did. I found it, y'all. There, bam. Please, come back tomorrow to Discord, not here, but Discord, on the Discord channel. Music at the Discord. Followed by movies at the Discord, which is, I need to prep stuff for, but it's probably going to be an Alec Guinness double bill because I've still yet to succeed at getting a Blu-ray working, but there is one final shot that I shall take tomorrow to see if I can get it to work. But you got some heckin' tunes to listen to, with Lucy talking you through why they're good and why you should listen to them. And if you don't like them and listen to them, then that means you're still a cool person. No judgment. But yeah, she's gonna like music at you, and you're gonna enjoy it, and it's gonna be great. You've asked for it, and now. So we'll see you then. But for now, I'm gonna go. Thank you. You've been a cool group of lovely, wonderful, chill people. Should I? Nah, let's just go. I'm tired. Let's go. I don't need to stick around. Great. Thank you all for being here. We will see you tomorrow. Goodbye and good night.